Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of TikTok Town Hall. Tonight, we are going to be joined by a bunch of first-time panelists and a couple that you know and love. We will be interviewing and discussing economic policy and restoring economic mobility to the younger generations of America. Tonight, our guest is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., independent candidate for president, and we are super excited to have him joining the conversation. This will be, I think, his fourth appearance on the Town Hall. Third appearance on the Town Hall. It's his third appearance on the Town Hall. We have a fourth one scheduled. And I am super excited to have so many amazing people joining the conversation. Tonight we have more than 1,000 RSVPs, which is definitely the highest number we've had for any of our town halls so far. I am extremely excited to have everybody joining the conversation tonight. I am going to put my phone into Do Not Disturb mode. Wait right there. And we're back. For all of our panelists tonight, before I bring you up, don't forget to put your phones into Do Not Disturb mode so that you don't look like I just did. We have some amazing panelists tonight. So, as always, Ian from Cancel This Clothing Company will be here. I do have some of my regular panelists moderating in the comments for me tonight because tonight is a very specific topic. We're going to be talking about economic policy. Now, I'm going to be the first one to say I am not an economist. As a matter of fact, economics was the only class I ever got a D in college, and I actually retook it to increase my GPA. So it's amazing, though, because once I started learning about private equity, how much economics started to make sense to me and how much it terrified me. So I've learned more and more about economics over the last 2 years, and I'm not an economist. But I do have a bunch of panelists here, and each of them has a different perspective on economics. Some of them are insiders in, some of them are just insiders in relation to certain areas of economic policy. I'm really excited tonight. We're going to be joined by Freddie Smith. Most of you guys know him as the boomers versus millennials guy, who's always talking about how much a boomer has to spend for a house and all of their living expenses versus what millennials or Gen Zers have to do, whether or not they had to pay for childcare or not, and how it's simply not the same. The math doesn't math. So Freddie Smith will be joining us. He's going to be just a little bit late because he's under the weather, but he's still going to be here. We are going to be joined tonight by Hannah, degree-free Hannah, who specializes in analyzing and assessing for high school students whether or not college is the right path for them based on not only surveys and testing of their personalities and their goals, but also the things that they're really good at and whether or not it's worth taking on debt for their goals in life. She's pretty amazing at connecting people with amazing careers, and no, they're not always degree free. She makes the right choices for the right kids. She's going to be joining us to talk about student loans and the cost of higher education. We do have Rathbone the musician, who makes a ton of amazing content on corruption, crony capitalism in our current society and specifically in our political sphere. We have, oh, thanks guys. The comments are going really, really fast. So I'm going to do my best, everybody. I really am. They're coming in fast tonight. For all of my moderators that are down in the comments, I want to remind you all, with great power comes great responsibility. This is a sphere that values the First Amendment above all. That is the foundation and bedrock upon which this house is built. If people are being respectful and disagreeing, that is A-okay. If they're learning from one another and being respectful, that is A-okay. The only reason I'm ever going to mute or boot you is if you are spamming, like posting the same thing over and over again so nobody else can have a say, or if you are using hateful commentary or threats. Otherwise, your speech is welcome here because I am a die-hard Brandeisian. I believe the answer to undesirable speech, untruthful speech, unlawful speech even is always more speech, because the proper speech, the more effective speech will prevail. Thank you. For any of you that don't know, I do have a subscription. If you guys want to be subscribers, we'd love to have you, but you never need to have a subscription to come to our town halls. We just do some other stuff offline with some of the candidates if you guys would like to join me. Those are the ways that I manage to stay with integrity here. I don't take money from the campaigns that offer it to me. I don't take money from other places, but I do take subscribers so that you guys can sponsor me to keep flying around the country, meeting with all these people. We are going to start bringing up our panelists, and I'm going to keep introducing them, but they're also going to introduce themselves. Let's get some folks up in here. Up we have Ian from Cancel This Clothing, who is always here. He will be in and out of being on camera because he's filming somewhere, I think. Hi, Ian.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Heyo. Yeah, I am currently on Jekyll Island where the Federal Reserve was founded. So it's a very fitting place to be coming into this discussion from.
That sounds like the perfect place. 100%. I apologize,
Tiffany.
guys. I'm just down here paying attention to who I have in the comments so I can get them up here. Ooh, and note my objection. I'm going to bring you up for the first half hour until Freddie Smith gets here if you'd like to, because Freddie will be 30 minutes late. So I'm going to bring you on up just in case you'd like to be in here. Clarkson is here. We're going to be peak Brady Bunch here in just a few minutes, guys. How is everyone this evening?
Doing so good. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for bringing us all together and doing the hard work and organization to coordinate this many people and get us all on together. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Oh, no, it's funny because when I first started, it felt like more work, but it definitely takes more work now, but it felt like more when I didn't know what I was doing. So it's a little bit easier these days. It's getting better. It's getting better. Although this one has been particularly challenging because I have been sent more than 600 questions by viewers. I have 600 questions copied and pasted to a giant Google Doc in front of me right now that I'm kind of analyzing and piecing out to different topics that we're going to be discussing. And they are lengthy. For everyone in the comments asking why Freddie's going to be late, it's not my place to tell you what his diagnosis is, but he's very under the weather. He can choose to tell you when he gets here if he would like. He's very, very sick. He is still coming, but he's been sick for days and days. That's why he hasn't posted anything new, and he's still going to be here tonight. So he will be up here shortly. Let's see, where are we?
It's cool to see so many new faces. Welcome to the party, guys.
Absolutely.
Stoked to have more people jumping on this train, talking to third-party candidates, breaking down the barriers between politics and regular people.
That's where it's at.
And for a few of you, if any of you were at Bitcoin 2024, I did manage to get a couple questions off in one of the deep dive sessions, but I had so many mic malfunctions that I was not able to address my questions. So I'm looking for redemption here tonight to actually get my questions out in the open in our actual native medium. So I'm very excited about this.
It sounds like Bitcoin 2024 was an awesome party. Everyone that I'm here filming with was just at Bitcoin, and it sounds like it was quite an event.
I am not going to lie. As soon as I left, I bought tickets for Vegas next year. That was the coolest group of people I have met in a very, very long time.
It's going to be in Vegas?
Yeah.
I'm totally going. I can go to Vegas for cheap all the time. That's where I was born and raised.
Oh, yeah. You should totally come. You should totally
My whole
come.
family's there. I can stay for cheap.
Yeah, such good people, good everybody, everybody that really values hard work, values money, and values amazing things that don't lose value over time, which is the whole Bitcoin ethos, actually. Yeah.
We have another family that's going to be joining us. American Family Road Trip is a family that does a lot with crypto too.
Yes, they're actually friends of my friend Katie. Do you know who Katie the Russian is? She basically sells passports to other countries so you can have dual citizenship. And she's actually a really good friend of mine. They're in Austin, so we're there kind of frequently, not infrequently, I should say.
So JD and Brittany owned in the same franchise I did when we got taken over by private equity. And they got out literally a month before I got targeted for being the president of the union. That started me on this journey.
So that explains why they would go to Bitcoin. That explains a lot, actually.
Private equity firm targeted all of us, and they were actually in the co-op that I was in that they tried to take out. So, yeah, they're really great folks. I didn't think I'd end up being a creator like them, though. All right, so I want to start making the circle. We have a few people that are just rolling in right now or are learning how to join a live, which is fun. But I want everybody to kind of come around, introduce yourself, explain why you have questions about economic policy or what your content's about, what you're hoping to discuss today. And I want to remind everybody that when we put these panels together, they're very, very deliberately designed. They're designed to make sure that we have a diversity of opinions and voices. Just like I tell the moderators when we bring everyone up, we value free speech in here. We value differences of opinion. We value learning from one another. And I value that I learn more from the people I disagree with than the people that are in my echo chambers, period. So when people come in and they wonder what we're doing in these lives, what I want them to know is that we choose very deliberately, always, there's 9 of us, and there's always 3 that are leaning towards the candidate that's here, 3 that are absolutely, there's no way in heck, and then there's always 3 undecideds or like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. We do that very, very deliberately because we want to make sure that people realize that these are honest conversations, and Candidates don't get veto authority on topics here. They don't get veto authority on questions here. We're here because it wasn't that long ago that if a candidate wouldn't do town halls and meet with their voters, they weren't allowed to get elected. Voters wouldn't tolerate it. That was literally 3 election cycles ago. And we have stopped demanding that, and I'm here to bring it back. So tell us why you're here, Ian, and we'll go clockwise.
My name is Ian. I started making stuff on social media just over a year ago now. It's been a wild ride. And I was a GameStop investor that did not know much about the economy for quite some time. And through watching all of that financial crime play out and watching the sort of decentralized knowledge network start to dig into what had happened, I got inspired to start doing my own digging into what had happened. And so I started making content thinking it would be all financial. And it turns out that when you want to try to understand what's wrong with our financial system, you have to start to understand what's wrong with so many other systems in our world that my content rapidly expanded to be basically anything corruption, anything like that I think is important to learn about in order to understand the world. So that's what I do.
Nice.
Thank you, Ian. Oh, and also say what you'd like us to call you tonight. If like you don't want us to use your handle, you want us to use a name, please do that too for us, because I've made some mistakes on that in the past when I didn't know better and outed somebody's first name because I didn't know that they didn't want anyone to know it. So please let me know what you'd like
I
me
already
to call
doxed
you.
myself on Twitter, but you can call me Cancelous Clothing Company too. So
Okay. All right. I'll let you decide for me, degree free, before I say your name.
Oh, my name is Hannah Maruyama. You can find me on the line. I am there. You can find me. I say a lot of stuff. So basically what I do is I work with parents of 16 to 20-year-olds. I help them figure out how to get their kids good jobs without putting them into the college cult, without leaving them in student debt, without having them lose their values, because your kids do not need to buy college degrees in order to become machine learning engineers or midwives or anything in between. And I'm tired of pretending like buying paper from a college means that you're educated, because it doesn't. We have long since passed that. So I'm trying to draw the distinction between people who are educated and people who are papered and educated so that we can reclaim the definition of education for people who are able to educate themselves. So that's what I do.
Thanks, Hannah. All right, I'm going to go down to Clarkson, who is a first-time panelist as well.
It's great to meet you guys, everybody on the panel, as well as I'm just happy to be here. I want to say political content creator, but I kind of just make regular content and sprinkle in politics. I started out a few years ago being a hardcore conservative. I was fairly young at the time, and now I find myself having a whole new political awakening. And I'm just happy to be here and hear what Bobby has to say, because I'm one of those people that Tiffany was referring to, where I'm like kind of on the fence, kind of not. And I'm not an economist or anything like that, just an average everyday citizen that wants to see America do a lot better and wants kids to have a brighter future. So.
And I don't know which name you want me to use, so I'll say Rathbone.
Clarkson's fine. Clarkson's
Clarkson's
fine.
okay. And then
that's my name.
Rathbone, I'm going to let you decide what we call you tonight.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Rathbone, and I'm a musician and a teacher. And sort of like Ian, I just started a TikTok account about a year ago and started doing political satire, political commentary. And I guess what's interesting for me tonight is that I'd be one of those people that would be decidedly against electing a candidate like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because I'm anti-capitalist and I don't believe that reforming capitalism works. So that's sort of my angle with it all. But I'm happy to be here and facilitate the discussion. It's going to be interesting.
Awesome. And do you want us to call you Rathbone?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. And then we're going to come over to, well, your name's on the screen. So Rachel.
Yes.
Money Honey Rachel.
I'm Rachel. It's really good to meet you guys. I'm honored to be on the panel with all of you, so thank you for having me. I'm from Kentucky. I live in Denver, Colorado now, and I'm not a political person or content creator. I'm a personal finance and real estate person. I used to be a licensed former financial advisor, and I studied financial economics in college, and I've written a couple best-selling books, and my whole goal is to make the topic of money management and stock market investing and real estate investing easy and approachable and simple to learn about. And I work mostly with women and millennials and Gen Zers. So I'm really excited to talk to everybody today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And then I'm going to come down to, I know their name is in their handle. So JD and Brittany, I will not use your last names, but JD and Brittany are American Family Road Trip. They travel the country with all of their kids in a school bus, and it's the coolest thing ever. And not the country. They went to Brazil for months just this past year with their kids. And they're also small business owners that I happen to know personally and adore. So introduce yourselves. Tell us why you're here, what you'd like us to call you, and what you're hoping to discuss today.
Hey y'all, so I'm Brittany, my husband JD, and we are American Family Road Trip. We are small business owners, like Tiffany said. We own numerous
small businesses,
entrepreneurs. We really like to go into a bunch of different categories. None of them kind of make sense or match, so that's kind of the beauty of it. But just loving life, loving family. We try to encourage others to do the same. And if there's more than one avenue to live, more than one way you can things happen in there that are making things look different for all of us. So
yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that we are really interested in, one of the small businesses that we own is called SatSaver, and it's in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I spend a lot of time and energy studying macroeconomics and geopolitics, and we just are in a unique place in the United States economically, both as a world reserve currency and just the various economic circumstances that we experience here with domestic dollar values diminishing, for example, right now. And I guess, really we just like to get a better grasp on how RFK, like his uncle before him, would handle some of the major challenges that the U.S. government is experiencing with the people that largely control, if you will, the monetary system. So that's kind of some of the questions that we're interested in.
And as I understand, you guys represent two of our contingents because you're a house divided right now on how you're voting. You don't have to tell us how, but I do happen to know they represent two different blocks for us tonight. You don't have to tell us, but they are definitely a house divided on this particular election, and so they were representing two of my blocks, and I'm very grateful. Another thing that I'm really happy to have JD and Brittany on for is that they met in the military, and a lot of people don't understand how American economics really impact military families differently on fixed incomes, and the way that just a little bit of inflation can absolutely destroy the financial feasibility for military families to exist really and survive, and they don't have the ability to go ask for a raise or negotiate for a different salary. I was a military wife for almost a decade, and so I'm really glad to have that perspective as well on the panel. So, and then we have Freddie Smith that'll be joining us in about 15 minutes. And he works in real estate, but also economics in general, and does a lot of economic analysis. Tonight was the first night that I've had this many questions sent to us from the public, and they were vast, diverse. So this conversation is going to be really interesting. And then he will, just so everybody knows, when Mr. Kennedy joins us, he will not just ask, but pretty much demand that you call him Bobby. The first night I ever spoke to him, I stuttered a lot and said, Mr. Bobby, Sir Kennedy, sir. And he said, if you don't call me Bobby, I'm going to hang up on you. So he's pretty staunch on that issue. So you guys don't have to feel weird about calling him Bobby. As we proceed through the conversation, once he joins in about 45 minutes, I'll ask everybody to mute, and we'll kind of unmute as we go, because we save all of the audio and video for you guys and for the candidates, so you guys can use it later, and it helps to keep it clean. Somebody's having a little static. I'm not sure who it is, but we're going to try to figure it out. I think there's a chance it's JD and Brittany, but I don't know for certain.
Is there a way to?
Yeah, the mute is down by the comment button on the left of the.
Not
far
JD
left of all the
and
buttons on the right.
All right, so it's not JD and Brittany because I can still hear it. Hannah, you're muted, no? Oh, I think it's Ian. Ian, you've got static. Okay. I bet it's his Bluetooth.
No, I've been muted the whole time.
Oh, well, then who was it? It had to be one over here. It got quiet. We'll just reintroduce one at a time. Ian.
Is it me?
Maybe. It just got better. Whatever just happened, it's better right now. So we're doing good.
You fixed it, so it's good now.
There's a couple things we're going to work on tonight that are super important. First of all, we started doing these town halls because I led a protest in DC when they moved to vote very quickly to ban TikTok. For anybody that doesn't know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is actually suing to stop the TikTok ban. He's a big free speech advocate. And if you guys, you don't have to leave this live to do it. I have tagged at the link in my bio, the very top link is to sign his petition to demand that Congress stop the TikTok ban before it goes into effect on January 19th. So everybody in here, we're calling on you to sign that petition tonight. That is not going to stop him from litigating the issue, but they are trying to get like 1 million signatures to deliver to Congress, which is something that we're working on. So I encourage everybody that's in the comments, you can go to my bio without leaving the live. You don't have to leave the live, and it'll let you work within there to sign that petition. So we're going to encourage everybody to do that. I'm also going to ask everybody, because it's the beginning and I have to do like the live thing, for us to make it into the algorithm the way we want to make sure as many people hear the diversity of voices here as possible. I'm going to ask the silly things, and I'm going to say, please like, please share, please do that, because the first 30 minutes of a live are really important for how it's going to travel through the algorithm throughout the whole 2.5 hours. I'm very bad at asking for self-promotion. You're going to see that. I usually have Middle Road Sanity in here to do that for me, but he's actually driving to Maryland, so he's just, he'll be here in the morning. So he's going to be modding for me down in the comments. And then I'm going to ask you guys, please, for all of the creators that are here, follow them. Follow the creators. If you hear something you like, you hear something you don't like, you want to learn more about their perspective, maybe you want to argue with them in their comment section, it still helps their algorithm. So please like and follow all of the creators here. Rathbone is on his backup account because he did something naughty at some point and got himself banned on his main. So if you guys want to follow his main account, it is Rathbone Makes Music. Is that right?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. So you guys can follow him at Rathbone Makes Music because his music is awesome. For the record, I started following him for his music and stayed for his political content. So I encourage everybody to follow the creators that we have in here, not only because it's a hard thing that we do. It's a dangerous thing whenever you have, and it shouldn't be. It should never be dangerous to engage in conversations that help us learn. But increasingly, it's been so much easier to cancel folks for taking part in hard conversations that don't toe one line or the other. I'm a big believer that none of us can say we did our part in any election if we didn't ask hard questions of every single candidate. That's exactly why we've invited on every single campaign. It's why we have been talking to J.D. Vance, and we were also talking to the Biden campaign before the change. I'm working on Kamala now. It's why we have had on Chase Oliver, and why we've had on Jill Stein, why Jasmine Sherman is coming up, and we are expanding to Senate candidates and House of Representatives candidates as well. We do not discriminate on party. As a matter of fact, we want different parties in here because that's the area where we uncomfortably learn and grow. It's also where we have the ability to enact the most change. I'm firmly and fervently of the belief that the reason our candidates have become so comfortable just doing what they are paid to do by the billionaires that donate to them is because they no longer have to engage with us. Ever since town halls sort of went by the wayside and we started just deciding who to vote because a billionaire paid for 1 million ads and told us where to vote, they've stopped having accountability to us. And this encourages that accountability, but it also changes their mind about issues. We've had multiple candidates come into these TikTok town halls and change their perspective on an issue after they spoke to somebody in this panel. And that's exactly what we're here to do. We're exactly here to encourage that type of uncomfortable growth. I also love it when our candidates say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to work on it and I'll get a video out. I don't need them to lie to me or fake content to me or give me a stump speech. I would much rather always hear that we are not sure, but that we're going to work it out now that we know it's a problem, which is something that we hear a lot from candidates, and I encourage. For all of you that are in here, everybody in here has made some kind of content about economics and what we're facing in America. I want everybody to kind of say what you think. There's not one issue for anybody. We all have a lot of issues we're seeing. But I'm going to kind of start at the bottom and we'll work our way back up. What do you see as one of the biggest issues facing either your followers or your community or your family that you are really hoping to see talked about tonight and in future town halls? Brett, you're up.
JD had to go check on our children. We do have 8 kids. And so honestly, for us, the inflation is a large issue. having an unstable future for our dollar for our children is a big. Here we go. It's kind of like the big thing that we're kind of interested in long term.
Basically, it's just continuous and never-ending atrophy of purchasing power of Americans, and we're focusing on America in this particular instance, but whatever Americans are kind of dealing with the purchasing power of the dollar, all the other countries in the world that are subordinate, if you will, to the American dollar are experiencing even greater inflation in their currencies.
Thank you. I'm going to come right up to Rachel. I'm going to come to you, and then we'll go over to Rathbone.
Yeah, that's a great question, Tiffany. I think the biggest problem that I'm seeing with the content I create is unaffordable housing. So whether it's the sort of restriction of mobile home parks or rising interest rates, or what I see as kind of an impending homeowners insurance crisis, there's not a single person I know that's not impacted by unaffordable housing right now.
Yeah, that's something that's, of all of the questions we received, housing is the one that has certainly been most detailed in receiving repeated commentary and requests from the over 500 questions that have been sent in. Rathbone?
Yeah, I don't think people call out and incriminate the political economy that we live in enough, and I'm tired of not talking about it. So I just want people to hate capitalism as much as it hates them. And so my whole point of this is I just want to share these ideas. I think thoughts become action, and I want to change the acceptable terrain of ideas that we have in our culture, in our society. So I want to talk about capitalism.
You know, one of the things that I've really started to struggle with is I used to be one of those people that believed I could thrive in capitalism and move comfortably through it. And recently, I have started to really hone in on, as I've looked at private equity and stuff, the fact that the worst piece of corruption, I think, in our capitalist society is that our political system has been so corrupted by money that at this point we don't have capitalism for the elite. They have socialism. The government gives them bailouts. The government gives them government contracts. They make laws that favor them. They give them tax breaks. They flourish under socialism for corporations. And Americans suffer the worst misery under the negative effects of capitalism, because we suffer under capitalism down here, but the corporations thrive in a corporate socialist environment. And that I mean, there's also another word for it, right? Because there are systems of government that choose business winners and losers, and they're words I'm not going to say out loud, but they give them A or F or C, right? There are certain words in here that I try not to say because it gets us dinged. Also, I'll ask everybody to refrain from using any words that are not family friendly, because I did not mark this 18 and over. Just bear that in mind tonight as we go through our conversation. But that's something that I really have struggled with. And when I say it, people get very upset with me. Yeah. But that is, in effect, what has happened. And that is where we are.
I've never heard anyone explain it like that. That was very insightful.
Yeah, when you look at 2008 and we look at the fact that the companies that destroyed millions of families' lives, millions and hundreds of thousands of people's home ownership, equity, everything they'd ever hoped or believed in, the companies got bailed out and it never helped the people. But all those banks are still here, or the bankers just moved to another bank and started recycling and wash, rinse, repeat. And so when you see that, that is in effect socialism for corporations. You see it with airlines that are constantly bailed out.
A lot of way oligarchy as well, to be quite honest. You have like an oligarchic structure where the production of money is regulated and controlled by a small group of people that benefit from what's called the Cantillon effect. People closest to money creation benefit most from it.
Yeah.
You can also purchase assets with the newly created money, and by the time the checkout lady in Oklahoma City gets the bill, it's twice as much as it used to be. And so all new money creation flows immediately to asset commodity prices. So I mean, just kind of, I was listening to Rathbone, and I can see like a lot of problems are associated with or considered capitalist in nature but we're not dealing with a capitalist system any longer. We're dealing with a different form of economy that prioritizes the oligarchic structure and the nepotistic relationships that they carry amongst one another.
I actually hear that a lot too. I often hear people, when I talk about the cost of college and the corruption and the complete lack of accountability for the results and the ROI, people just say, oh, it's a capitalism problem. I'm like, what is it about an entire system, an $848 billion system that is entirely subsidized by the government, where the price of goods sold and the lack of accountability and the bankruptcy exemption of the loans is a direct result of the government? What about that is capitalist? Oh, wait, nothing. Absolutely nothing about that is capitalist. If it was a capitalist system, they would shut down. They would shut down.
What was that, Rathbone?
I would say that's everything to do with capitalism. Capitalists have captured the government. And this is what I don't understand why libertarians can't wrap their mind around that capitalists legislate the laws that benefit these corporations. You're saying that it's a bug in the system, that this isn't real capitalism. No, it is capitalism. This is the core feature of capitalism. It is predicated on the exploitation of the working class by an ownership class. So there's two classes.
Capitalists don't have time to work for the government. We're busy working for ourselves.
Workers. What's that?
Capitalists don't work for the government. We have better things to do than work for the government. The people that work in the government are not capitalists. They don't create any value. That's why they work for the government.
The government works for capitalists.
Something like 54% of Americans.
I didn't say that the capitalists work for the government. I said the government works for capitalists.
No, you said that the government was captured by capitalism, and it's not, because the people that work in the government hate capitalism more than anybody. You can see that by the fact that they constantly.
Where does all the money that we subsidize the government with go to? It goes to corporations. It goes to the profits of private enterprises. All of the innovations in the military-industrial complex, the things that we're using right now, the technology, the internet, iPhones in general, all of that was subsidized by public money using publicly funded programs. And when those innovations become marketable, the government signs the patent rights and the copyright and all the technology over to private corporations, who then market it and sell it back to the public who paid for it in the first place.
That's not capitalist, because the government, there is no public money. There's only your money and my money that the government took from us. It is not, and that is not capitalist. Capitalism fundamentally wouldn't even have a government structure, because purchase is consent. That's how it works.
One of my favorite phrases along the line of what type of government do we have is a kleptocracy, which is defined as a government that takes from its people and enriches itself. and I think that there's features of oligarchy, there's features of capitalism, there's features of a lot of them, but there's features of kleptocracy all throughout, because ultimately you're right. It's like, this was our money. This was our production value. This was our, we did fund all of these public goods like Rathbone is saying, and then it gets turned around and we get exploited, and it gets exploited for the benefits of the corporate class. I mean,
it's not to completely argue with you, Rath, but I actually agree with a lot of the things that you've said. It's just, it's probably the same as people who, and I'm not sure if this is how you feel, but if you are, if you do care about socialist values or communist values, and those are the systems that you think are better, I'm sure it's similar to probably how you feel when someone says, oh, well, it's not real, whatever. It's the same thing. It's just a different side of the coin.
People don't understand that the economy creates politics. The economy, there would be no government without the economy itself. The economy creates all social and political life, and it formulates our ideas about what's possible about our society. So it all comes back to the economy. And when you have, in the capitalist mode of production, you have the means to produce, it's owned by private individuals who are unaccountable to the public, and it tends toward monopolies. And like we say, every political decision is, you cannot divorce politics from the economy. So everything that is done in the economy is done in the name of capitalism, and capitalists have controlled the government. They control the actual legislation.
Well, just because something's done in the name of capitalism doesn't mean that it's actually capitalist. I think a lot of what they're doing is, in essence, anti-capitalist. The government intervening in the free market is not a capitalist ideal. If
It's
anything,
fundamentally not. Yeah.
No, the government intervening on behalf of corporations and capitalists is,
the government intervening
as Tiffany said, it's socialism for the rich.
That's not
That's
capitalism.
nepotism, and that is oligarchy who is channeling these contracts and deals to people who they have in their circle. And the thing about it is that is truly, in my sincere conviction, the real problem is the monetary system is not a free market. The money of the United States is not a free market money. Okay, from 1912, between about 1784 to 1912, the value of the dollar maintained its purchasing power. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, the U.S. dollar has lost 98% of its value. That's the crux of the issue. There's a stealth tax. People are worried about tax. Taxation is theft and so on and so forth. But the real stealth tax is inflation. The purchasing power of the dollar is being strategically diminished to benefit those who buy assets with this newly created capital. We talk about housing prices and such. 80% of U.S. dollars, this is according to the St. Louis Federal Reserve's data, 80% of U.S. dollars were created in the past 5 years. And you wonder why prices go up? Well, that's because inputs to create goods require actual things like diesel, labor, commodity prices will go up with any new monetary creation, as well as assets. So we have this whole class of people that allows monetary creation before the rest of the populace knows about it, and they get to buy the assets. And then we see this also, addressing some of the points that you made, Rathbone, about corporations. And trust me, private equity is part of the problem too. Because these guys are able to back out, declare bankruptcy, and keep it all themselves and partition it off with various different legal entities and structures, so nobody actually has to pay the piper when the piper gets paid. It's every single citizen that those costs are defrayed amongst us. But ultimately, the real issue is left, right, middle. I don't care what it is. The value of the dollar is diminishing dramatically. So you're working harder and harder continuously for less and less.
Right. It's the value of your labor
is corrupted.
The value of your labor is going down.
Yeah, the value of your labor is going down. That's true.
That's what the problem is. And if inflation were actually a thing,
and as more U.S. dollars are created, the value of your labor diminishes. As more U.S. dollars are created, those dollars flow into asset valuations. And the people who are the last to receive the benefit of there's no benefit to inflating currency. But the people that benefit.
Yes, there is. There's absolutely a benefit to inflation.
That's just basic. So if you're a modern monetary theorist and you believe in Keynesian economics that animal spirits move the markets, then maybe you might believe that.
No, we're not talking about spirits. We're talking about the material economy.
Yeah.
One at a time, pretty please. There's a lot of us in the Brady Bunch box right now. Guys, I am not going to stop this conversation. I just want to make sure we get to everybody because we're going to go really quickly where he's going to be here. Clarkson, what is the biggest economic issue you're hoping we get to touch on tonight for your followers? And Freddie, I'm going to come say hi to you in 1 minute.
Well, we've already kind of touched on it. I think it's inflation and the corporate capture of government and how that trickles down to so many different issues, especially affecting the middle class and the poor. I am a capitalist, but I believe that we don't live in a capitalist society, and a lot of the things that are happening in our government are fundamentally anti-capitalist. I believe in the free market, and I believe in the free market making decisions that are best for people who deserve to succeed. I believe in merit, a meritocracy. I believe that's what we should strive for in society. But it's getting harder and harder for people who deserve to succeed to actually do so because of the corporations and because of all of the crony capitalists, or what they call themselves capitalists, but they're not, the people at the top making decisions that fundamentally affect the people at the bottom. And that wealth gap is changing significantly, and it changes in housing, just food pricing, everything in general. So I think, the biggest issue that I see is inflation, government spending, and corporate capture, which Bobby touches on a lot, which is what intrigues me about him.
Okay. Hannah, for you, what is the biggest, your viewer base is very clearly young people that are headed to college and trying to figure out, or not headed to college, depending on what they're trying to do and what you help them connect with. What are you seeing from your younger follower base about their biggest concerns? What did they tell you they hope you'd talk about today?
So I'm more working with the parents because they're the ones that are more directly affected by the student loan problem. The kids are definitely affected downstream, but the largest group of people taking out student loans are actually grandparents. Why is that? Because they've already tapped out their parents and they've tapped out the kids, and so they're going back up to the grandparents. I think if things continue as they are, you'll actually see colleges try to incentivize people to have children so they can attach student loans to their names. I really do think that that's where we're headed because the colleges are so greedy and so out of control, and they have nowhere else to get money from. So that's where they're going to go. They're going to go to the future because they already tapped out the past. Currently, there is a complete lack of accountability and no incentive for colleges to behave ethically or morally in any way, shape, or form because they are subsidized by the government. And if any of you just saw that Scott Galloway talk where he talked about how the U.S. is ruining young people's futures, if you watched all the way to the end, you'll realize that what he actually should have made that talk about is how colleges are destroying young people's futures. You want to know why they can't buy houses? Because they spend $104,000 on average for a bachelor's degree when they were 17 or 18 years old that is bankruptcy exempt. And they spent 6 figures. They will never buy a house. They buy a paper instead. That paper, 1 in 4 of them make less than $32K 10 years out of college. 53% of them are under or unemployed. That is where we are at because colleges have done such a good job marketing and such a good job convincing everyone that they are a synonym for education, when in fact they are an educational product of which there are many because we live in the internet age. So that is something that I'm very passionate about and I would like to talk about because it is something that is ruining our country. It is boxing people in. It is cutting off their options. It is burning their freest years. It is burning all of their energy. It is putting them in a place where they don't feel like they can change jobs, where they don't feel like they can actually explore education. They don't have the educational budget to learn languages, to learn music, to learn art. They have to work 2 to 3 jobs to pay off their student loan balance because they decided to buy something when they were 17 and they're stuck paying for it. They can't buy education, they can't buy homes, and they can't build the futures that they want.
And I think that is something that the TikTok, I don't want to say TikTok, Jen, because there's a whole bunch of people down here saying boomers in the comments we're representing. But we do have a very large young population on here that honestly, a lot of them, some of these concepts might have seemed foreign or out of the question for young people to even be discussing. This isn't something that we all had to think heavily about when we were young. It's really just started to snowball, but they're all in these comments right now. You can see lots and lots of folks down here saying I'm young and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm young and I'm never going to be able to own a home. I'm never going to have a good life that my parents had. These are things that as young people, I mean, we might have seen it. Some of us might have seen it. I grew up in a foster household in a trailer park. So I thought about things, but a lot of people didn't have to. And now I think there's not very many young people that aren't thinking about these things.
Thomas Jefferson actually talks about that. He says, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. And he goes on to say that he believes that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. He who controls the money controls the world. And that's really the core fundamental issue here, because we see corrupted forms of capitalism that are present today that aren't really manifesting the benefits that a pure capitalist system would offer or a more pure capitalist system would offer. So I think it's super important that people read things to educate themselves. There's a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. This is one of the most documented books that you could possibly read and have a greater understanding of how to position yourself for the future. And I know it seems dire, and it is right now. It's really dire. But get ready, because they're about to switch to a deflationary environment, and any type of debt that's placed upon your shoulders by yourself or others is going to become too much of a burden to carry. So it's important to not outsource our financial education to government institutions who have no incentive to properly educate us on what the outcomes of their systems that they're currently subjected to are. Educational, I believe that money is the highest form of energy. I use my efforts and intellect and labors to get myself something that I can transfer in the open market to whatever I prefer to purchase later down the line, because I don't want to immediately, like these rapid hyperinflating currencies like Argentina there for a while. They would cash their checks the moment they receive them, and they would buy as many groceries as they could because the price is going to be marked up immediately the next day. And that's directly correlated with the value of currency diminishing at a rapid pace. So that's what inflation does. And if we can have some financial literacy, then people will stand against these corrupt systems. But what we get is these false red herrings that are intentionally foisted upon uneducated, and I'm not saying that in a condescending way, but people that aren't educated on finance. Finance is something that you should be responsible for yourself. If you, it sounds terrible and intimidating, but when you do that, it will open your eyes to the reality of the markets that we're subjected to, regardless of whether it's right or wrong.
This is capitalist propaganda right here. You're seeing it very, very, very clear. As success and failure is dependent on the individual. If you are not successful in capitalism, that is your fault. And, you know,
communism always makes these like emotional pleas towards people.
Yeah, yes, because
and there's no like
you made your point.
We can all, I think everybody in here at this point agrees right now, we are in a very corrupted, nobody could argue that we're in a pure capitalist system. And I'm not saying capitalism is right. I'm not saying that I know another system that's better. Rathbone, if you could think of a system you thought was better, what would it be?
People are still thinking that there's some ideal sense of capitalism, that we just haven't achieved true capitalism. We've had 400 years of it. And you know, if inflation wasn't a tool for corporate greed, they wouldn't be record-breaking profits right now. Corporations are gleefully boasting how much money they've been making. $50 trillion has been robbed from the working class in the past 40 years of neoliberalism. It's gone to the top 1% of the American population. $50 trillion. Our wages in real terms have stagnated since 1979.
Yes.
100%.
This isn't real capitalism. This guy's trying to tell you. This is not real capitalism, though. We just got to fix a few things and stop.
What system?
Guys, 1 second.
Money is not a free market money. The money is not a free market money. So,
guys, 1 second. So Freddie's been here for about 7 minutes. He's been super patient. And Freddie, I've never seen you without your beard. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been one of those weeks. Yeah, changing it up a little bit. No, I was enjoying the conversation. I also had my 2 cents. Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I recognize all your faces. I see you on my For You all the time, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you're giving everyone. My 2 cents that I just want to throw in today, what I want to talk to RFK about is the housing. I think that is what is burdening a bunch of our youth, whether you're trying to buy a house or whether you're renting. It's taking 30, 40, 50% of people's income, which is a huge problem. I know something that he's championing is a 3% interest rate for first-time home buyers. I want to dive a little deeper on that because I think in theory that's a really good idea. But I also just want to ask about the supply and demand issue, about the supply of the housing. And without seeming too negative, I do want to see what he thinks if we can't fix the housing, what a renter's nation looks like. Because I've ran the numbers before, and if we have a repeat of the last 30 years, the next 30 years, the average rent could be $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And I don't know how millennials are going to retire with even $1 million if rent is going to be $7,000, $8,000. So I just want to talk about the rent. I want to talk about the housing. But all the points you're all making as well, from college to inflation, I think we're all on the same page that it's just getting out of hand. But I want to focus in on the housing for my portion here today.
I want everybody to keep in mind that we have on all these different candidates, right, with all these different perspectives. One of the things that we try really hard to do in here is talk about solutions. And I know that, like I just said, everybody in here is saying at this point that we are in a corrupted version of whatever capitalism could or would be. We are not in a free market system. There's about 1 million things that would have to happen to actually have a true free market system right now. It would not be a quick 1 or 2 or 3 thing fix. Interestingly, Rathbone, you mentioned that you wish that libertarians understood this better. Chase Oliver was on here the other day, and recently I asked Chase, I said, do you believe that free market is possible, given that right now arbitration hides all of the bad conduct? A market can't even respond. They're hiding things behind closed doors. They are favored by a bunch of laws that protect them. If a kid gets maimed at a theme park, or a woman's house burns down because her washer and dryer had a defect, you're never going to find out about it because they have arbitration agreements they never even intended to sign that are keeping them quiet. At a certain point, even Chase Oliver said, you're right, there's nothing without regulatory fixes. So yes, I agree. Like, we bring on all of these different candidates to work towards meaningful solutions, but also to help them understand where we're living, where we're existing, and also to recognize that right now, this is where we're building from, or tearing down from, right? Like, we can talk about idealistic, if everything were perfect in a pure society, this would be ideal. But if we want to change something, we're changing from the shoes we're standing in right now, right? And that's a reality. To totally tear down the system is not something 99% of America are prepared for, the difficulty that actually comes with something like that. And to act like it's only a 1, 2, 3 pivot and we can fix it is also not a reality for most people. But we do know things are fundamentally wrong. I think everybody feels things are fundamentally wrong, some more than others.
Right. I mean, you mentioned the free market. The free market requires government intervention. You know, capitalists require government intervention. It's not that government is bad, okay? The government is authoritarian by nature. Democracy itself is authoritarian by nature. All governments have power over public life. So to say that a government is authoritarian is just like, it's a foregone conclusion. Of course it is. The problem is, the government for who? The government in capitalism is for capitalists. It's controlled, captured by capitalists. It doesn't work for the people. We work for the capitalists. We give all of our money to the government, and it goes to funding corporate profits.
Can I just ask the obvious question? Because we're about to have Bobby join, and then it's all going to change, and the roundtable is going to stop, and we're going to move to Q&A. But if there were a system that you favored, which one might it be? Or do you not know? There's something different. Rathbone. Oh, sorry, I should have clarified that. Rathbone, so some folks in the comments are asking, you know, you're saying everything that's wrong. Do you have any ideas for,
there's only one solution, okay? So capitalism, there can only be one opposite to capitalism. There's no opposite to capitalism, and it's a stone or a lamp or you know, a country. It's a, you know, what we have to identify what is capitalism. Capitalism is the private ownership of the means to produce commodities. It is private ownership over public resources. So what is the opposite to that? What is the antidote? What is the antithesis? Obviously, that would be public ownership over public resources. We don't have a democracy in the economy. And from the economy stems all material power and all social and political life. So as long as the economy is fascistic and captured by capitalists, there will be no meaningful change in the government. There will be no meaningful change in politics because all power derives from the economy. And
I have a quick question. I have a quick question for you. So I totally hear what you're saying. And this is genuinely, I'm interested as to how you would fix this. So you're saying the antithesis to capitalism, as you see it, is public ownership. Public ownership actually means government ownership. Hold on, let me finish my question, please, because I really would like to know your answer. What is it about the current system and the current government that makes you feel that they would improve in morality or results if you gave them all of the power and all of the money?
Well, the point is that capitalists have vetted and handpicked who will be in positions of power in the government.
That's not what I asked. What makes you think that if you give them all the power and all the money, why would they improve?
I'm not saying you give them all the power. You're still focused on the politics and the government. I'm saying the economy itself.
Well, in order to abolish private property, you're going to have to use force. So you have to.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what a democracy is.
So you're advocating for giving the government the power to abolish private property, and you think that they're going to disperse it equally and morally? This is the same problem that goes in every country.
The same government will be doing that. Yeah, like what?
Utopia that it turns into a very catastrophic thing for its citizens, and that's why millions of people have died in pursuit of this dream that you're speaking of.
So you're saying communism is when 100 million people
it's a dream like utopia that's not possible because it requires the consolidation of
kills
power.
20 million people who can't be fed because they're poor every year. Okay?
And people must always act
5 million children die every year because capitalism
guys, we can't hear everybody when we talk over each other. And I like we're talking solutions right now. And I also like that we're talking about risks. I think it's really important that we recognize right this moment that this election is going to take us, no matter who we vote for, towards somebody that says they're, well, almost anybody, with the exception of maybe Jasmine Sherman, is going to take us in the direction of continuing where we're at. So what I really want to focus on, and what is essential for everybody that's in the comments, for all of the young people that are looking for hope, is that we talk about the solutions that are actually feasible and what we would most like to see, because you're right, to like the inverse of what we have. It's hard to even acknowledge how much suffering would have to take place to even attempt it.
Well, I think that the problem is that what we have right now is essentially the government controlling the market, which is kind of what Rathbone is advocating for. What we're saying on here is that the opposite of what we have is a free market capitalist society, because we don't have that. We have faux capitalism. It's not actually it anymore, because we consolidated power in the government. Now, the only way we can pursue what Rathbone is saying is consolidating power in the government, creating the same problem that we're living in right now. So I'm just curious to see an actual solution, or to have a discussion based on actual solutions, rather than pursuing these dreamlike ideals for society as if human beings aren't the source of corruption. It's not the system, it's humans. When you consolidate power at the top, humans will abuse it. So
capitalism is human nature, right?
No, capitalism is not. No, human nature is innate, because it's competition. That's innate in nature among all species.
No, what you're saying is that capitalism is human nature, and human nature is greed, and there will always be people that are exploiting human nature. And so there's no reason to really.
Even in oligarchies, we see the same. We see that, like, if you see it in feudalism, you see it in, even in communist countries, you see human nature is still somehow the oligarchs rise to the top and the working class suffer the most. You see it in communist countries around the globe, right?
Well, you're getting into another discussion about the history of 20th century U.S. imperialism.
Hopefully, the oligarchs rise to the top because they're insiders. They're closest to the power brokers. They're not rising to the top because there's some kind of issue.
About the economy.
Capitalism says, I like the deal that you're offering me. If you continue to offer me a good deal, I will continue to do business with you.
No.
Communism says, you take this at the price that I tell you, or I kill you.
Right. No, it's not. If you go to the middle of nowhere, sorry. If you go to the middle of nowhere and someone has grown a head of lettuce, stop rolling your eyes. This is a discussion. We're here to talk. That's why we're here.
It's okay, guys. Everybody's being respectful.
If someone has grown a head of lettuce and someone walks up and said, I would like to buy that head of lettuce from you. I have a glass of water. Would you trade me? That is capitalism.
Bargaining. That's commerce.
That's capitalism. It's purchase. It is. It is.
The existence of two classes,
but
owners and workers.
We're arguing over definitions, and where we're at right now, where we're about to have the conversation that everyone's been waiting for. There's thousands of people in here waiting for this. And I want to make sure, I understand that everybody's feeling very, this is the topic that I knew would be the most heated, because everybody is impacted by whatever we discussed today, and everybody is suffering under what we're discussing today. Everybody is feeling the effects of what's happening, whether it's at the pump, the housing, the rent you're going to pay, the never retiring, student loan burden, the lack of the ability to buy groceries, the lack of to know that your children are not going to have a better life than you do. Everyone is. And so I knew tonight would be the conversation that would probably be the most difficult. Now, I want right now, just as a quick reminder to everybody that's down here, because Bobby's going to be joining us in about 30 seconds here. He's a little bit early. I want everybody down in the comments real quick, because Bobby's about to join us and I can't keep coming back to saying this. If you guys can if you can share the live, that's going to help us stay in the algorithm for the next hour and a half. We're about to start. Now, when we move, all of our squishy faces are going to get squished all the way to the side. I will make Bobby bigger here in the left. And I will literally be messaging you guys to tell you when I'm about to pitch to you guys, depending on how the conversation goes. I do have 600 outside questions. So if I have something that proceeds naturally from somebody else's question before I call on the next one of you, I will pause for that. I'm also going to remind everybody that one of our goals tonight is to get lots of signatures to stop the TikTok ban. We advocate for free speech here. And so Bobby is, I'm going to say Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but he prefers to be called Bobby for the people that just joined. He is suing to stop the TikTok ban, but he is also delivering a petition to Congress And I've put the link as the top link in my bio. You can sign that petition without ever leaving the live. You do not have to leave here to do it. You can just go up there, click the link in my bio, and it will keep the live playing in the background. So you don't have to do that. Rathbone does look a little bit like Zach Galifianakis, but I love him. He's one of my favorites, and my husband's favorite t-shirt has a Wolfpack shirt that looks just like Rathbone. Somebody in the comments just said that. So we're about to have Bobby join us. It looks like he's entering the chat. I just got a message. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to try to get him added to the chat somehow. It's always interesting to see who's managing his tech side, because sometimes it's a security guard and sometimes it's a tech person. We're going to see which direction we're going to take to get him in here tonight. Ian, you did not get to tell us what your biggest concern and your followers' biggest concerns are. You and I work often to circumvent and to help people make choices that take money away from the people that are monopolizing our economy. That's a huge part of your content and my content. What would you say that your followers are most concerned about right now? And Bobby is here. All right, everybody, I am going to bring Robert F. Kennedy Jr. up. I'm going to ask everybody to remember that when we go to Q&A, we're all going to keep ourselves muted, because keeping the AV working is really important. And honestly, because I'm managing it all from a very small screen, it's really helpful for me. And you guys all know how to text me from the other phone. If your screen goes dark, I will know that you're just over communicating. All right, guys. And with that, I'm going to ask all of our guests and all of our viewers and followers right now to welcome Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I will expand him once he gets in here so we can bring him up. And we will move over here to the side. I will send over a video request and we'll get him turned on. Hi, Bobby. Welcome back to TikTok Town Hall. How are you tonight?
Hey, Tiffany. Really good to see you. I want to say hi to everybody and thank everybody for participating in the town hall and also standing up for TikTok. We need as many avenues and platforms for free speech as we can get in this country. The free flow of information is the basis of our democracy. It's the sunlight, it's the fertilizer, it's the soil of democracy. And without it, democracy withers and dies. So that's why we never look back and see people who think about people who have censored speech in the past and say that they were the good guys. They're never the good guys. They're always the bad guys. Anyway, I'm really happy to be here with you all.
For everybody that's down in the comment section, we do have a lot of questions. Bobby, there's been an immense amount of interest on this topic. We've been sent over 600 questions at this point. I'm at 618 right now from people in advance of the live. I'm going to do my best to try and make sure that the conversation gives room for plenty of time to discuss issues, but also to make sure we can get to as many of the viewers and followers' questions as we possibly can. I know your time is valuable, so as always, we're glad you're here. And if anyone doesn't know, Bobby was the first person that was willing to come on TikTok Town Hall when I had invited many, many candidates. He was the first person brave enough to come in and face what is an unscripted conversation that's really, really, for some, intimidating. And so I'm just grateful that he's brought us to the point where we're able to have these conversations, because if he hadn't taken a chance on this, we wouldn't be doing these. Tonight, Bobby, would you like to tell us, just as a starting point, because tonight is on questions on economic policy, but also on a path to restoring economic mobility or hope in the system we're working within in the United States. What are you seeing on the campaign trail as the biggest issues that people are talking to you about and the biggest concerns that they're bringing to you on the economic landscape that they're living in?
I would say the biggest issue now is affordability. That, we got $6 bread, $6 milk. Mortgages have doubled in 4 years. 2 years ago, the average price of a home in this country was $215,000. Today, it's over $400,000. And the interest rates have gone up from 3% to over 7%. And we have a whole generation of kids who aren't getting into home, aren't going to buy a home. I have 7 children, Tiffany. My eldest one is 40 and he owns a home. But the younger 6 kids all went to the best schools. They all have great jobs, but none of them has any chance of getting into a home. And, they're making what seems like a lot of money, but the goalposts just keep moving on savings, and particularly the inflation is eating it all up. And I see among this younger generation of kids this kind of economic nihilism where they get so frustrated about the fact that they're not getting any closer to a home, and they just say, well, what the hell? And I'm going to spend the money to take a vacation. I'm not going to save it, because if you save it, it just gets eaten up by inflation, and it's absolutely demoralizing to them. And, it's really important. Our country and democracy is based upon an ownership society. We, after World War II, when I was a kid in the 1960s, we were the richest country in the world. We owned half the wealth on the face of the earth. And one of the primary reasons for that was widespread home ownership. After World War II, World War II, another thing happened. The industrial base of Europe was annihilated. But the United States industrial base was cooking at maximum level of redlining. We had factories for everything. We were making everything from blue jeans to transistor radios to RCA Victrolas, which were record players, which you guys have probably never heard of, but they were a big deal when I was a kid. And television sets, they were all American made. The Japanese weren't making anything back then. And everybody was buying from us, and everybody wanted American products. One of the reasons for that is, one of the other reasons for the economic explosion in this country is that we got every American into a home. After World War II, we passed a GI Bill that made it really cheap and easy for anybody to buy a home. And then we put the highway system in place, which created, all this land where people could easily get to outside of the cities. And when I was a kid, the average income was about $5,000 a year. And the average price of a home was about $6,000 or $7,000. Well, everybody could afford it. And what happens when you own a home, it's transformative, because you care about your community, you care about your hospitals, about your schools, you care about the police, you care about the transportation, you care about the appearance of your home, you care about your neighbors, you're invested in that community. And you recycle your money in that community, and it the quality of life implications of that are enormous. And then but something more important happens is you have equity now, which means you can borrow money. You can take a second mortgage on that equity, on that home, and pursue an entrepreneurial impulse. So if you want to build a sporting goods store or a yoga studio or a saloon or a restaurant, you have the money to do it. You can access that money, and you can make a big bet and do it. And that's what happened in our country in the 50s and 1960s. People started taking second mortgages, building businesses, and you had this economic ferment. And the American middle class became the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind. And today, we're moving away from being an ownership society into a rental society, because this is the first generation in history that is not going to be able to afford a home. In American history, it's the first generation where their financial welfare is going to be significantly lower than their parents. And part of the reason for that is inflation. The other part, probably the larger reason, is you have these big economic powerhouses like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Fidelity, that own 88% of the S&P 500. And now they're trying to buy all the real estate and all the equity. So they're buying the single-family homes, the residential homes, the farmland, and they're transforming America from a nation of owners, from an ownership society, into a nation of renters. And when that happens, we go from being citizens to being subjects. This is a colonial model. It is the aristocratic model, the feudal model that we left, that Americans left in Europe and came here, and they could buy their own land here, and that was the nascent beginning of democracy, because you own land and you want to be a self-sovereign and you don't want people telling you what to do. And in Europe, everybody was used to a system where the aristocracy owned all the land. You had to rent it. You had to do what you were told, and there was no sense of self-sovereignty. And here, it was the widespread land ownership that really was the fertile field of democracy. And when we destroy that, we're going to lose touch with the things that made us the first democracy in the world. I mean, in modern times, in 1784, we became the only democracy in the world. By 1865, there were 5. By the time my uncle was president in 1960, there was about 140. By the end of the 60s, 190, all modeled on the U.S. So we were the exemplary democracy in the world, but it was all based on being able to develop a middle class. And you did that by widespread land ownership. Thomas Jefferson said that American democracy was rooted in the control of the landscape by tens of thousands of yeoman farmers. And each invested in our system of government, each invested in our financial system, and that capitalism and free market capitalism and democracy went hand in hand. Well, now we don't have either of those. We have corporate crony capitalism, which has nothing to do with free markets. It's just monopoly-controlled capitalism, which is just a form of plutocracy or aristocracy, of oligarchy. And we don't really have democracy anymore. We have like a Potemkin village of democracy. We have a faux Hollywood stage, which, we all go and vote and think that's democracy. But there's nobody in this country that think that political leaders are actually listening to them or care about what they say. The only thing political leaders care about, most of them, is what their donors want. And it costs you $300 million or $100 million to run for the United States Senate in New York State now. You're spending every day, all day, calling people who can make $10,000 contributions, and you have zero time for anybody who can't sign a check. And when you get into office, you're calling, they have right next to the Senate now in the House. You're not allowed to make solicitation calls from the Senate office, from the government phone. So they've set up an entire building right next to the Senate and the House that is just a call center. And all the senators and all the congressmen go over there and they call it dialing for dollars. And that's what they do with most of their days nowadays. And, they're not working for us. It is a fake democracy. And of course, the regulatory agencies are all captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. Congress is controlled by those industries. The press is not a free press. It's giving you either the Democratic orthodoxies, the Republican orthodoxies, and they're not letting anybody who is outside of that Overton window talk to the American people. It's only people who are, and the Democrats and Republicans are pretty much the same. They're all controlled by the same donors, and they're all part of this system that is designed to act like a sump pump to just suck cash and wealth and equity out of the American middle class and pump it up to this new oligarchy. During COVID, there was a 4.3 trillion. They shut down 3.3 million businesses, but the business they shut down was not the big businesses who are donating to them. It was the little restaurants in their town and the bowling alleys and the sporting goods stores in those places. The big guys like Amazon were making a killing during COVID, and Walmart And all of the tech companies were just getting rich from it. And so there was a $4.3 trillion shift in wealth from the American middle class to this new oligarchy of billionaires. President Trump and President Biden created globally a billionaire a day in 500 days during those lockdowns. And the American middle class got absolutely decimated. Today, more than half the people in this country can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have a emergency in their family. And if you're part of that cohort and the engine light comes on your car, it is the apocalypse, because you're not going to be able to afford the mechanic. You're going to lose your car. You're not going to be able to get to work. You're not going to be able to pay your rent, and you're going to be out on the sidewalk. And now we've got armies of people living in tents in all of our major cities. And those people are not there because most of them, because they're mentally ill or drug addicts. They're there because the engine light came on in their car, or they got 2 flat tires at once, or they had a medical expense. And that is why they're living on the street today. And they can't get into a house, because nobody can afford a house anymore. So the major drive of my administration is going to be to make sure everybody can get into a home. And I have a whole retinue of policies that's going to make that happen. You can't do it with a silver bullet. I have the 3% mortgage, but we need to create more housing stock. We need to make it illegal for BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard to buy up all of our houses, and we need to make sure that that our kids can compete for the price of money against those big titans of finance.
You just touched on almost every single issue that we brought up as the primary issues that each of our followers. Clearly, we chose the right panel tonight, because every single thing that was brought up during the pregame or the tailgate before you arrived, you just discussed in the issues that you're facing out on the campaign trail. Freddie Smith, one of our creators, I don't know if he can stay with us long, but it was the first issue you brought up, talking about housing. Of the over 600 questions, I haven't gotten to look at the last 120 that have come in, but of the 500 questions we received, over 150 were about housing, affordability, renting, and generally how people are going to live. Freddie, his content is entirely about discussing the difficulties that younger generations face, and opposite with what our prior generations, the possibilities they had economically. I want to kick to Freddie, and Freddie, I'm going to ask you, I think, for question 1, because it really just kind of gets right to the point. You've pitched some policies that people are very interested in, and Freddie had some questions on the housing policies that you've been discussing recently. Can we go there?
Yeah.
All right. Freddie, you go ahead. Take it away.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Kenny. I hear I can call you Bobby. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, Bobby. You mentioned the 3% interest rate for first-time home buyers. I think a lot of first-time home buyers can benefit from that. What is the implementation of that? How would that be implemented? What would be some of the challenges that would potentially stop that from happening? What is a process to have something like that implemented? Because there hasn't been anything like that before, correct?
Well, no. My uncle actually did it during 1996, and I was down in Tampa the other day, and I visited one of the buildings where, that is part of that is one of the legacies of that project, which was a 3% mortgage guaranteed by the federal government. And that is a big apartment building, and people are paying, $200 or $300 a month rent. And it's a really nice place. And, but also Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae had similar programs, but unfortunately, they did not make their programs available to lower cost housing. The Obama administration said we're only going to make it, higher priced housing, and that really, I think, destroyed the major benefit of that program. We need to have that program where you can get it, where you can buy a house. First of all, we need to dismantle some of the regulatory impediments to creating cheap housing and bulk, or you can have really, really high quality homes, but they're maybe smaller homes. They may be, some of them, there's almost every city in this country now has laws that make it illegal to use them to put a mobile home in that area. But there's these new categories, very exciting new categories. I was involved with one of these companies of prefab homes that are environmentally conscious, and that can be shipped in on a truck and erected in a single day. And they keep the prices down by building them entirely in a factory. You put the foundation, the electric, the water, and the sewage into the ground, and then you drop this house on top of it. And so, one of the companies I was involved with had kind of an origami house that came on a flatbed truck. You dropped it in and then, unwrap the origami, and you have these beautiful houses with very high quality of life. And there are many, many entrepreneurs building these kind of houses all over the country. And the big impediment for many of them are archaic housing codes that won't let you put them in. So, we need to dismantle those, and then we need to make these financing available for homes that may cost $50,000 or $70,000 or $100,000. We need to get every member of this generation into a home. And, I get people bombard me with these fantastic ideas every day about how to do that. It's like just saying that has released a ferment of ideas about how to get it done. And I hear these wonderful ideas every day from people, and I want to do all of them. Oh, it's going to be my policy to make that happen. And I'm going to listen to every single idea, implement everything that I can, find the easiest way to do it, and do it as fast as I can. And I want to hear everybody's idea about how to do it. But, that we don't lack an imagination in this country. We have a can-do attitude. The problem is with red tape in government and bureaucrats who really don't want to take responsibility for getting something done. And I'm going to sweep all that stuff aside and just make it happen.
That would be amazing. So I also have a follow-up to that as well. If we are able to implement 3%, would that increase the demand and further the problem with our supply? Is that why the supply and the 3% have to be tandem?
Yeah, you got to increase supply simultaneously. There are something like 300 abandoned malls in this country. Cities all over this country have empty lots that are abandoned. I mean, I was in Detroit the other day, and a huge percent of that city is now abandoned lots. And every city has them. And if you can get that real estate back into play where you get tax-paying citizens who are living on them, and you put a little house on that lot, you can solve a lot of the housing problem. So, the real estate is available. We can use the malls also. Part of I'm going to do a domestic Peace Corps where I'm going to teach kids where kids can go, instead of going into the military, they can go into the domestic Peace Corps and they can learn a trade. They can go and work for a couple of years in their community. And, I can take these malls, turn them into factories for producing housing, and kids can go in there and learn plumbing and HVAC and electricity and carpentry and get the trades. And that, we really need to teach this generation. When I was a kid, we had to take shop class. So everybody knew how to use a jigsaw, how to hammer a nail, how to build things, how to build furniture. We had to do it. Today, the shop has been abandoned. And, we have a whole generation that does not know how to do basic things. If we had a war today, we could not fill the factory. We don't have the factories to support the war. And we don't have the people in the country who can do basic mechanical tasks. We need to do that, and it's critically important now in the era of AI. And you know what Elon Musk said? AI is going to take our jobs, then it's going to kill us. It's going to take our jobs first. And everybody initially assumed the jobs that were going to be taken away by AI were going to be, blue collar jobs. But actually, what we're finding is the jobs that are being taken are the accounting jobs. They're white collar. They're lawyers. They're artists. My wife was on a long strike, who's an actor, was on a long strike because they can take her image now and they can make a film without paying her. And that was one of the big things about, how do you get compensated for AI? Well, that was not what we were thinking initially with AI. And the irony is that it is a lot of these blue collar jobs that are going to be, that they're not going to be able to do with AI, at least, in the next couple of decades. You're always going to need a plumber. If your toilet breaks in the middle of the night, you need a plumber to come to your house and climb up a little narrow staircase and fix it, or crawl into the crawl space in your attic to fix the electricity or the HVAC. And those are the most secure jobs, but we have a whole generation of kids who are just not trained in those jobs. And we need to do that. We need to, we need to produce the housing stock, and then we need to remove the regulatory impediments and identify the real estate and make sure that we can build these, what I would call low-income housing, but that would have a stigma. You think of housing projects, et cetera, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these beautiful, environmentally conscious structures that we can build now where people can raise a family and have an enriching, beautiful lives. And that's what we need to do.
I love that. And then just one more question on the housing is...
Buddy, can I come back to you on that? Because Rachel's number 2. I will get back to you, I promise.
Okay.
Rachel, I'm going to come to your question too, because he piggybacks immediately off of what he's doing. And I want to make sure we get to everybody, and then we'll circle back through.
Thanks, Tiffany. Hi, Mr. Kennedy. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for the gift of your time this evening. My question's about homeowners insurance. So as we all have seen, Florida homeowners insurers are canceling policies and leaving the state and liquidating at a very rapid pace. And we're kind of seeing the repercussions of that across the country. The cost of homeowners insurance is up 23% from January 2023 to February 2024. My own premium on my property here in Denver, Colorado just went from $2,500 to $3,200. So got a nice little increase there. So my question is, does the federal government need to step in and avert a homeowners insurance crisis? And will taxpayers eventually be forced to cover the costs of a massive bailout?
I don't know what I understand that's a huge problem. And I actually, in my house, am looking for ways to not pay my homeowners insurance. Unfortunately, if I can't get fire insurance here except by paying money that is higher than my mortgage payments. And I went to the bank and said, I don't want to have fire insurance. I'd rather self-insure and just take the risk, right? Even though it's a high risk area, because it's so expensive. And it's doubled the cost of my mortgage. And I couldn't do that because the bank requires me, that holds my mortgage, requires me to have an insurance policy. So I'm trying to figure out a way that I can self-finance this house and get rid of that cost, because it is so devastating. But unfortunately, it's regulated by the insurance, as you probably know, is regulated by the state, not the federal government. And so I'd have to, I agree this is a huge problem. It's a problem that we got to help people solve. I'd have to study it a lot and hear a lot of ideas about how to do it at the federal level, about what the best way to do it at the federal level is, because home insurance is usually the purview of the state.
Yeah.
And Rachel, did you want to quickly, I know he started to address it, but did you want to tackle question 1 as well?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Tiffany. So we've talked a little bit about unaffordable housing, which is, I think, one of the most pressing problems. So thank you for touching on that already. Trailer and mobile home parks used to be really a symbol of the American dream. We're seen as close-knit communities in the 50s and 60s. and provided affordable housing for millions of lower and middle class Americans. And now they've really become associated with poverty and blight. And there's all of these restrictions that are being put into place at the state and city level. Virtually every city, as you've already addressed, in the US no longer allows mobile home park construction. So given the affordable housing crisis, what is there anything we can do at a federal level, and what would you propose at a federal level to offer more affordable housing options and to decrease the restrictions on mobile housing?
I think I go back to what I said before, is that we need to use federal financing opportunities to incentivize states and localities to remove a lot of the impediments to affordable housing. And I agree with you. I had many friends who grew up in communities, and they were very tight knit. Wonderful, real sense of community in those and in trailer parks. My wife was raised in a trailer, and lived in and out of trailers until she actually moved to California from Florida. So it's something, but not only that kind of housing, but all of this new innovative housing that just does not fit the housing codes. And those housing codes, a lot of time, are written by captured agencies who are serving the financial interests of large-scale contractors or other special interests by making innovative housing unaffordable. I think we need. I'm going to do everything I can to that. We have to do that. My program is not going to work if we can't dramatically increase the amount of housing stock in this country. So that is what I'm going to target. And every idea that you have for doing that, I want to hear.
Thank you so much, Bobby. You just touched on something about the regulatory capture of all of our agencies, which I know is actually our topic for our next town hall, but it definitely touches on every town hall that we have and every topic, because every single agency seems to be captured. It impacts every bit of our lives. We have a bunch of questions that have come in from the public, and my question, I'm just going to start to pivot us in that direction, if that's okay, and then we will, I think, come back around. So you and I have talked about monopolization a lot. We've talked about Sherman antitrust laws not being sufficient for where our country is and for tackling really the issues we have with current oligarchies, not even monopolies. The tech oligarchies in our country can't be effectively regulated by the Sherman antitrust laws because they never conceived of regulating something that is free for consumers, even if it monopolizes every facet of advertising for every small business behind them. Given that so many industries have been acquired and monopolized, veterinary care as an example, all of veterinary care has been monopolized. It's been conglomerated into about 6 companies, and they've bought up all of the supply chain. They've bought up the medicine suppliers, the delivery systems, the testing labs, and now anyone that has refused to sell out to these private equity conglomerates, they've hiked up all of the prices because they bought all of the suppliers. So all of the vets are being squeezed out, and prices for veterinary care have almost tripled in the last 4 years. Like, how do we make it, given that we have inadequate laws right now and we have corporate capture, how do we stop monopolies from squeezing out small businesses and reinvigorate competition again so that small businesses can thrive?
Well, part of the reason for that, Tiffany, is there's a sense that the entire federal government is captured by big business, and they're not only capturing the franchise that you and I have talked about, all these child care, veterinary care, all of these food franchises, et cetera, and but they're also vertically integrating them. And so every step in the supply chain is now part of this monopoly control. And these are like kingdoms now. They're like empires. They're not even businesses anymore. And then they, control the committees and they control the regulatory agencies, et cetera. So it's terrible. A lot of them you can address with the Sherman Antitrust Act and with other anti-monopoly laws, statutes, and regulations. The problem is that the U.S. Justice Department and the other regulatory agencies won't do that because they don't want to offend large donors. For example, there's only 4 meat packers in this country. And the whole purpose of the USDA was to diversify the meat packing industry, and which is better for farmers. Those 4 meat packers control the prices, not only to consumers, but also the price that's paid to farmers. So it's a war on small business in this country. And there's been a war on small business that's been going on for since the early 1980s in this country. And I'll give you one example. And, this is an example of something that we get that I could do as president. There's a law that says that 23% of federal contracts have to go to small businesses. And nobody obeys that law. Today, less than 3% of federal contracts go to small business. But I'm going to enforce it so that 23% go to small business. And that is what we want to do is move the advantage, every federal subsidy, and there are trillions of dollars in federal subsidies. The federal subsidies to the oil industry alone are about 5.2 trillion, or the global subsidies. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything I can to eliminate subsidies to big businesses, and to instead funnel the advantages. And if there are subsidies, they should go to small business. Not more than half, I think 52% of the jobs in this country are in small business. And those small businesses get almost zero in terms of federal subsidies. So, I want to reverse that formula and make it reflect the ideals of our country, which are about small business and middle class and Main Street rather than Wall Street. Wall Street owns Washington, Main Street doesn't. And Wall Street is making war on Main Street.
Do you, Clarkson, are you okay with me coming to number 2? Because really, in addition to the corruption and the antitrust issues we're facing, we also have a lot of corruption within the government that is just wastefully expending taxpayer dollars. And Clarkson, I think your question too kind of spoke to this. Can we go to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to meet you, Mr. Kennedy. So one thing that I'm seeing a lot with my followers, and we were talking about this before we started, is how much inflation is in fact impacting everybody. And as we all know, government spending is really the key indicator of inflation. We saw that with COVID. Trump spent so much money, and then Biden continued that spending spree, and now we're dealing with those effects now. So in order to curb that spending, and since we haven't seen a surplus since Clinton, what would you say some parts of the government, or where can you identify the most wasteful spending, and how would you curb it to avoid inflation getting worse in the future?
Yeah, the biggest opportunity is with 2 opportunities. One is the military, and I will cut the military budget in 2. We now spend $1 trillion on the military if you include the DOE, which is the nuclear program, if you include on national security apparatus, the intelligence agencies, and foreign aid, which is military aid to places like Ukraine. It's almost $1.3 trillion. The actual Pentagon budget is about $940 billion. And we were told in 1992, when the Soviet Union was collapsing, that we were going to get a peace dividend, because we weren't going to have to spend all this money on military, on stealth bombers that cost $1.5 billion and can't fly in the rain. And we'd spend that money building schools and roads and railroads and public infrastructure and a national energy grid and all these things that we really need to be spending money that are going to increase our GDP. $1 million put into the Pentagon creates about 2 American jobs. $1 million put into childcare creates 18 American jobs. So, and what we need to do to get out of this budget, disaster, $34 trillion debt, you can't just cut your way out of it. We need to redirect some of that money to things that are to projects that are going to increase our GDP. And, I'll talk in a minute about what those kind of projects should be. But we were told we were going to get a peace dividend and that we're going to cut, at that time, the military budget was $600 billion a year, and we were going to cut that back to $200 billion. And instead, it's now $950 billion. And why did that happen? That money is not being spent on national defense. That money is being spent on global domination. We spend more in this country on our military than the top 10 other nations, the next 10 nations combined. We have, we tell everybody, oh, you got to watch out for the Russians, the Chinese, because they have imperial ambitions. The Russians have 1 base abroad. The Chinese have 1.5. We have 800. Oh, and each one of them is just, a seed for a new war somewhere in the world. That's the whole function of the intelligence agencies and the Pentagon is to provide us with a constant pipeline of new wars. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the military budget over the first 4 years I'm in office. I'm going to cut it in half to from about $940 billion to about $500 billion, and then look for other cuts. That will be the same amount in real dollars as we were spending at the height of the Cold War. Why do we need more money now than we were during the Cold War? We don't. As I said, the extra money we're spending is not about national security. It's about global control and domination and imperial ambition, which is just hurting us. The wars, we've spent $8 trillion on regime change wars. If we brought that money home, we could get childcare for every American mother, every American parent. We could liquidate a lot of the school of college debt. We could make Social Security solvent. We could do, so many things with the infrastructure in our country that we need to do that would actually feed GDP. Instead, we've hollowed out our country. We've exported our industry. We have no industrial base in this country anymore. If we wanted to fight a war today, we couldn't fight it. We were able to fight and win World War II because we had thousands of factories and we're cranking out millions of cars and planes, et cetera, and we could adopt those. And we made, World War II, we were making a ship a day. We couldn't, there's no way in the world that we could do that now. We don't know how to, we don't have the people who can do it. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the industrial base. We've sent that all to China, and China could fight a war. There's one company in China that controls 75% of the drone production in the world. But we can't fight against China. They actually have an industrial base where they can fight a war. We can't. We're the way we think about geopolitical or military power. We're imagining what we were 30 years ago, and we're not that anymore. We have no industrial base left in this country. And so it's hurting us, and I'll just give you an example of how it hurts us. And you can tell this story for every war. We spent $3.6 trillion on the war in Iraq. Iraq, which never did anything to us. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with bombing the World Trade Center. That's just what they told us at that time. He didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They were just lying about it. Spent $3.6 trillion. Iraq is now worse off than we found it. We killed far more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein ever did. Iraq today is a proxy of Iran, which is exactly the foreign policy outcome that we've been trying to avoid. The Gaza war is a direct result of Iraq. It unleashed Iran in the region, because Iraq used to be the bulwark against Iranian expansion. We created ISIS. We sent, that Iraq war and the spillover war in Syria sent 4 million refugees up into Europe, and they've destabilized every democracy in Europe. Brexit, the exit of Britain from Europe is a direct result of that. We're also now, it's driving the rise of BRICS, which are all the nations that have gotten together and said, we're not going to trade on the US dollar anymore. So we're about to lose the dollar as a global reserve currency. And all of this is, the result of this warfare mentality, this addiction to war that we have. You can do that with every one of these wars. They've made us less safe in our country, less safe abroad. They've bankrupted our country. There's a wonderful historian called Paul Kennedy, no relation, who's at Yale, and he's written a book on the decline of empires. And what he shows in that book is every empire for the last 500 years can trace its decline, whether it's Britain or Spain or India or China or Japan, every one of them, and trace their decline to the overextension of their military abroad. And that's exactly what we're doing now. My grandfather, who was an anti-war activist, used to say that the real strength of a nation comes from a robust domestic economy and a middle class. And that's how you strengthen a nation, not by making weapons, because they don't help you. They're stranded assets. They're not bringing wealth back into our country. You're blowing them up. They're not. It's like digging a hole and filling a hole up. Yeah, you're going to pay somebody to do it, but it's not creating goods and services. And that's what you need to do. And so I'm going to cut that budget in half, and then I'm going to end the chronic disease epidemic, and that's the biggest cost. The chronic disease epidemic is costing us 5 times our military budget. When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60%. In your generation, it's off the charts. Everybody has autoimmune disease, neurological disorders, allergies, all this stuff we never heard of before.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, diabetes, a typical pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes in his entire career, 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic, and nobody's asking, why is this happening? Well, the biggest savings we can have is by ending that, and it's going to be easy to do. I'm going to direct NIH to stop spending its $42 billion on drug development and finding out and identifying the causes, the environmental exposures that are causing each of these, and that's going to unleash the entire lawyers community to start suing these companies. So I'm going to show that high fructose corn syrup and glyphosate are feeding the diabetes epidemic, and lawyers are going to sue them and shut it down. I'm going to show, what's causing food allergies in this country, what's causing autism, what's causing all of these neurological injuries, all these autoimmune diseases. And, each one, we know what the culprits are. Glyphosate is neonicotinoid pesticides, high fructose corn syrup, PFOAs, the forever chemicals, PFASs, cell phone radiation, and a number of others. There's a finite number that fit the profile and fit the timeline, which, all of these diseases began in 1989. So there's only a few exposures that fit them. I'm going to identify them and eliminate them. And we're going to start making healthy kids again in this country. There's no country in the world that has the kind of chronic disease explosion that we have. And, there's 1,000 ingredients in our food that are illegal in Europe. And they should be illegal here until they can prove that they're safe. And so that's another thing I'm going to do. I'm also going to use AI and blockchain to eliminate waste and to make all of our expenses and transparent. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the Pentagon released its most recent budget. And the audit, and it failed that budget for the 20th time in 20 years. It failed. They don't know what happened to the money. They lost, this budget says, they lost $4.2 trillion. They lost it. They don't know where it is. What they say is that most of that money is from things that they bought, and then they lost them. They don't know where they are. They're somewhere in their inventory system, in 800 bases around the world. They're stockpiles. They don't know where. They can't find it, so then they buy another one. And but if you had AI walkers that are going through the stockpiles, identifying those, if you're using blockchain to make every expenditure visible to the American public and transparent so that all of us can be looking at it 24 hours a day, we can eliminate it. There's the GAO, the General Accounting Office, and the Congressional Budget Office. Every year they do a study, and they publish a study about the most wasteful programs in government. The really insane stuff like Anthony Fauci's project to kill beagles, baby beagles with mosquitoes, or some crazy thing like this. They list them all.
The Dirty Dozen, right? They call it the Dirty Dozen, and they produce it every year.
It's not just Dirty Dozen. What happened is there's a couple of senators who take the worst of them out there, and the dozen worst, right? But there's crap like that on every page. So, and the book is this thick, and what happens to that book is sent over to the Library of Congress, they put it on a shelf, and it gets dust, and nobody ever does anything. So I'm going to go through all of those books. I'm going to choose all of the most outrageous stuff, and I'm going to list it all in one bill, and then send it to Congress for an up or down vote. That's what they did when they did the base closures. And it worked perfectly because the base closure commission, and I'm going to do this too, when we wound down the Cold War, none of the congressmen wanted, and they all said, yeah, we should cut our military expenses, but don't close the base in my district, right? You can't close that base because they all have their oxes that they don't want gored. So the way that they did it back then was they took all the ones that ought to be closed and they put them in one bill and they sent it to Congress and said up or down. So they couldn't vote on each one. They had to vote on the whole package, and it passed with flying colors because they kind of had to do it. Nobody wants to be on record blocking all the waste.
Right.
So I'm going to do the same thing with all the waste and get rid of all those programs. And then I'm going to use AI and blockchain to the max. AI is going to do one of two things. It's either going to make us slaves, the government that are going to now be able to distort our reality and control our behavior and, surveil us and understand what you're thinking and all of this, crazy stuff that AI is about to try to do to us. So that could be the future. Or you could use AI to actually make government more responsive, more transparent, more a servant to people. And that is what I think if we get Kamala or if we get President Trump, we're going to see the bad version of AI because I just don't think they're thinking about it. And the intelligence agencies are going to go in and just do what they want. But if I get in there, I'm going to make sure that AI serves the public interest rather than enslaves us. And I'm going to use it to eliminate waste in government. It's an incredible opportunity to do that and to make government transparent for all of us again. So I have a great optimism about being able to do this.
Bobby, you're touching on about 4 categories that we're about to get into. So I don't want to cut you off, but I have a bunch of questions that you just started early for me. So I'm rearranging things over here. Clarkson, were you trying to close out?
I was just making a comment. I was going to say, so no more. I was looking here, $3 million hamster fights.
Right.
The government funding.
That's a real thing. That's a real thing.
I mean, the most notorious example is the $16,000 toilet seats that the Pentagon was buying.
I recently watched a Senate hearing where there was a bag of bushings they were talking about for airplanes. It's just stamped out manufacturing you could do in any garage machine shop. And you can buy it for like $42 at any store or online. And we're paying $46,000 for a bag.
Yeah.
Contract with Boeing. I'm going to pivot to Rathbone, who has a question I think builds off of sort of the corruption that's infiltrated our governing process. And I'm going to let him come with that one. And then we're going to pivot towards education, and we're going to pivot towards currency and central banking. So I'm going to come down to Rathbone first, and then we're going to pivot to all of the things you were just bringing up. Rathbone, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, Bobby. My question has to do with capitalism. So you just said that capitalists have captured our government. And my question is it even possible to have an economy that benefits the working class under capitalism, which, as we see, always tends toward monopolies? And what are your thoughts on socialist policies like agrarian reform? You mentioned that private equity firms have monopolized the housing industry. So I just wonder if, like, as president, would you be open to the idea of reappropriating the private property that these private equity firms have monopolized and bring them under the control of the public again, under democratic control? Is there any way to create accountability for these big business monopolies?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have free market capitalism in our country. I think free market capitalism is the greatest economic engine, but it has to be harnessed to a social purpose. Otherwise, it brings you, as you say, it will drag you rapidly down the trail of monopoly capitalism, of crony capitalism, and of oligarchy, and that's what it will be the end point. So capitalism, in order for free markets to function, they have to have rules that make sure that the public is the beneficiary, so that you shouldn't be able to get rich by doing bad things to other people. And that's really what the government role is. You should be able to get rich by doing good, by doing things that are beneficial to the community. In a true capitalist system, for example, on the environment, you can't make yourself rich without making your neighbors rich, without enriching your community. What polluters do is they make themselves rich by making everybody else poor. They raise standards of living for themselves by lowering quality of life for everybody else, and they do that by escaping the discipline of the free market and forcing the public to pay their production costs. In true capitalism, you would have to accurately assess the value of natural resources, of the public commons, of our air, water, wildlife, fisheries, public life, the shared resources of society. And if you diminish those values, you'd have to pay the price. But what we do in crony capitalism is we just let them dump into the air and water and dispose their waste. In a true capitalist system, you have to pay all the costs of getting your product to market. And that includes the cost of cleaning up your mess, which is, a lesson we were all supposed to have learned in kindergarten. But what, polluters do and what big corporations do, they're always trying to figure out ways to externalize their costs and to internalize their profits. And they do that by having the political system and using political clout to escape the discipline of the free market and to allow them to create monopolies. One of the laws in a democracy that keeps free market capitalism in check to make sure it remains free market capitalism rather than morphs into crony and monopoly capitalism is the Sherman Antitrust Act that says you can't make monopolies, you can't dominate, a single market. You have to make sure that there's other competitors in that market because that's good for everybody. unfortunately, that law, itself, Justice Department became captured and the SEC became captured. And so they don't enforce those laws. But I am a very strong believer in true free market capitalism. It's just we don't have it. Oh, it has, and it's particularly been destroyed since the Citizens United decision in 2010. So, just to go back a little bit in history, there was a period in American history when we really lost democracy entirely, which is called the Gilded Age. And it was during the first rise of monopoly capitalism, when you had these corporate robber barons like the Carnegies, the Fricks, the Whitneys, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, etc., who all sat together on these interlocking boards of what they called the trust, the sugar trust, the rail trust, the oil trust, etc. And they controlled the economy in our country. They were able to handpick the United States senators because at that time, U.S. senators were not picked by the public. They were picked by the legislature. There was no direct election. They could abuse their workers because there was no rules, there was no unions, there was no rules that protected workers. And they didn't have to pay taxes. There were no corporate taxes. There were no income taxes. And there was no Sherman Antitrust Act. And what happened is that there was a group of popular movements, a populist movement in the countryside, which was agrarian farmers, which were democratic. In the city, the progressive movement, this is around 1903, grew up in response to this. And then you had these great muckraking journalists like Ida Tarnow and Upton Sinclair, who started exposing the corruption between government and these big corporations, and particularly targeting Standard Oil and John D. Rockefeller, who was the richest man in the history of the world at that point. And you had one individual, which is Teddy Roosevelt, who was part of the oligarchy, he was part of the aristocracy, but he wasn't intimidated by it. And he had a really strong vision there was anti-corruption, and he ran and he won and started enforcing and passing these laws. And they passed the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1903. They passed laws that gave women the vote. They passed a 40-hour work week. They passed laws against child labor. They passed laws that allowed unions to organize, and they passed the direct election of senators. And they were trying to re-democratize America, and they did it. The most important law they passed was in 1908. They passed a law that made it illegal for corporations to donate to federal political candidates. They also passed a corporate income tax and a graduated income tax for individuals. So wealthy individuals, for the first time, had to pay their share of the American experience, all the advantages they were getting from the canals and the roads and the railroads monopolies that they had. They now had to pay a little for it. So it re-democratized our country. And that law, most important law that said corporations can't give to federal political candidates, lasted for 102 years. And then in 2010, this corporate-owned Supreme Court threw out that law, and they said, "Oh wait, we made a mistake. Campaign donations, are a form of free speech. They're therefore protected by the First Amendment, and nobody can regulate them." That unleashed a tsunami of corporate donations into the political process, and that's why you have to pay 100, 200 million, 300 million to run for Senate. This election that I'm in now is going to cost $15 billion. And the little guys have no input into anything. And that's why, and their whole job, now that the billionaires and the corporations own our government, their whole job is to make sure that corporate crony capitalism and monopoly capitalism is the dominant form. And that's just a feudal, oligarchy, a feudal aristocracy. It's really a feudal plutocracy. Because the war economy is the center of the whole thing. And it's the military, BlackRock owns Northrop Grumman and General Dynamics and Boeing and Lockheed, and they have the contracts to destroy Ukraine, and they also have the $500 billion contract to rebuild it, and the whole thing is fixed. And they own the Democratic Republican Party, and that's why Democrats and Republicans all want to go to war and Ukraine, because, the whole friggin' thing is fixed. But I do not agree that you have to have monopoly capitalism. I think it's the function of government is to lay down the rules so that capitalism does what free market capitalism is supposed to do, which is to reward good behavior and punish bad behavior. And that when it's operating at its apex, that's what made us the greatest country in the world, because we were doing it right for a long period of time before the corporations came in and captured it, beginning really in 1980.
You mentioned during our last town hall that one of the things that you would like to do as president would be to immediately hit the road and go after a constitutional amendment. Is that still high on your priority list?
The only way we can get rid of Citizens United is through a constitutional amendment. And so, normally the president doesn't have any power over that, but he has a bully pulpit and he has the moral power. So I will go state by state and campaign for, the states have to pass the Constitution, they have to pass the amendment. And when, I think when 26 states pass the amendment, then it triggers, the law. So, and correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think it's 26 states have to pass it first, and then it triggers the Constitutional Convention, and then you get the law. And we have to do it because no matter what fix we make on our democracy today, no matter how great a president we get, it's all going to go reset back into this corruption as long as that law exists.
Ian is trying so hard to get back in and he can't. So I'm going to launch to JD and Britt via Ian because he just kind of took me on this happens. We're going to pivot. So JD and Britt have a question on banking cartels, but I want to do that via Ian's question, which was, what do you plan to do to end regulatory capture of the FINRA, the financial regulatory agencies like the OCC, the SEC? How are you going to end that?
But it's also the Fed, and that really is, I think, the biggest engine of corruption. I think the SEC is big. My grandfather started the SEC, so he was Roosevelt's treasurer. He was the only guy from Wall Street who endorsed Roosevelt. And then he was one of the biggest funders for the Roosevelt campaign. And then when Roosevelt created SEC, he asked my grandfather to run it. And my grandfather was the first chairman of SEC, and then he handpicked the second chairman, William O. Douglas, who then later became a Supreme Court justice. But what he did at SEC at that time is he saved Wall Street. A shark on Wall Street. He had been a pirate on Wall Street, but he was not part of that cabal because they didn't want Catholics part of it, and so he was always an outsider. But he learned on his own how to do all the tricks. And Roosevelt wanted somebody who knew all the tricks so that they could get rid of all the tricks, and that's what my grandfather did. He came in and he passed rules that made finance on Wall Street transparent, that punished insider. Small investors to come in and trust their money. At that point, most Americans were hiding their cash in their mattresses. The bank, I think 2,500 banks had closed. And people had just pulled their cash out of the economy, and the economy was stagnant. And my grandfather, who was despised by Wall Street to the day he died, it does, it just sits back and it lets BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and all these other big actors, Morgan, the big bankers, run the whole system and run it into the ground. And, that's why in 2008, the Lehman Brothers and all these people who were just stealing from us, and Morgan, JP Morgan, all of these people who were, had set up this. The people who had bought their crappy mortgages. So instead of giving the money to the people so that they could keep their homes, they gave the money to JP Morgan and to the, Goldman Sachs and to the big investors. And that, SEC is part of that system, which is just to say this whole sump pump system that is stripped. And, but again, I don't think any of this could be permanently fixed. But we fix Citizens United. I can fix it when I go in there. I can make sure that we have that the SEC commissioners that I appoint.
I apologize. Somebody's saying that they're not hearing us, and I'm not sure because I'm hearing you guys fine. Panelists, are you guys hearing Bobby? So we're hearing it from inside, but they're not hearing it from outside. I'm just going to take a second and see if I can make any change that's going to fix it for them. I'm going to mute you, and then I'm going to unmute you. I apologize because it seems like it's only your voice they're not hearing. I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm getting texts from your team over here. So I'm going to try to fix it. All right, guys, bear with me. Guys, is it cutting out while I'm speaking? Can somebody give me a quick response on that?
No, everything else is fine.
Okay. Go back. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. We're going to try again. We're going to pick up where you just were. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Well, what essentially the punchline is, and I can go in there and appoint really great commissioners to SEC who are going to, who are actually going to do the job of SEC. No permanent fix is going to happen until we fix Citizens United. Jamie Dimon is still going to be able to dominate the entire political process, and and Leon Black, and all the people from these giant investment houses who are the beneficiaries of this, of this sump pump system, of strip mining wealth from the American middle class and sending it upward.
I'm going to come down to JD and Brittany. They have a question on banking cartels and monetary policy, and I'm going to kick down to them because they had about 10 amazing questions. I'm going to try to circle back for more. We're going to start here.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Honestly, your relentless education campaign that a lot of American citizens aren't even aware of the topics and issues that you're addressing unless they've been in their own kind of cone of that issue that other people are experiencing. And it's the most challenging campaign to run is an education campaign, especially with a corrupted election system, some might say. I do want to say I've got you beat because I have 8 kids. My wife and I, we have 8 kids.
Congratulations.
I do appreciate your comments in Nashville. I am one of the people who feel very strongly about that, about hard money. Decentralized, distributed ledger is the key to providing accountability and a hard money system that can be depended on by families across the world, not only in the United States. So you mentioned in your opening address Thomas Jefferson. You mentioned your uncle. Executive Order 111. The central banking system and restore some accountability to the monetary system and restore money to a free market money. So right now there's a consortium of private bankers that sits atop the world's monetary supply called the Federal Reserve. The value of the US dollar has dropped 98% plus since the creation of the Federal Reserve. And in addition to that, prior to that period, for approximately 100 plus years, the purchasing power of the US dollar maintained throughout that period. I'm going to just throw one or two more stats out here. 80%, according to the St. Louis Fed, approximately 80% of US dollars have been created in the past 5 years. And I think that's a clear indicator of issues with interest rates, housing unaffordability, interest rates as they're trying to mop up liquidity in the market, housing unaffordability because all money flows directly into assets and commodities that cost things to build. Housing stock is a problem because people store their wealth in housing because they can't store their wealth in dollars. So basically, the crux of all these issues is I believe that if you can fix the money, you can fix the world. Regretfully, these organizations, the Federal Reserve is so deeply entrenched in every single organization that you've mentioned heretofore, whether it's the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industry. All these things are byproducts of easy money creation, and the ones closest to money creation who benefit most from it. What can we seriously do to provide accountability to the Federal Reserve?
Well, and thank you for the question. I mean, the Federal Reserve is really a bizarre organization because it's not even a government agency. It's a private bank, and yet it's in control of our money supply, and it itself is controlled by the big bankers like J.P. Morgan. So the policies that you see in the Fed are policies that are enriching the bankers. They're not. I mean, the Fed was started for a very good reason to provide in 1913 to provide liquidity to sound financial institutions during financial collapses, and to make sure that they could maintain liquidity. But that's not what it does. Right now, what it does is it executes the agenda of these big bankers to shift wealth upward, and it prints money, and it funds wars, which is one of the ways. And then we have a situation now where it used to be that if somebody wanted to fund a war or to print out some money let's say they want to fund a war, they'd have to go to the American people and they'd have to say, we're going to fund a war against Saddam Hussein. It's going to cost us $3.6 trillion. You're not going to be able to send your kids to a good school, but we'll get rid of this guy. And everybody would say that's a bad idea. We don't. Tax of inflation, which is a tax that robs the poor. It's just that. on fixed incomes is stealing from the poor, and it enriches. It makes this disparity between rich and poor greater and greater and greater systematically. Oh, it's terrible. And I want to restore sovereignty to the Fed, over the Fed, and transparency, total transparency. And and one of the things, I talked at that conference in Nashville about using hard currency to linking the dollar, at least in some way, to hard currency. We could start with 1%, issuing treasury bills that are 1% linked to hard currency, and then increase that the next 2% the next year, and 3%, et cetera, until you have 100%. And, what I'm going to do immediately is to transfer all 200 Bitcoins. And, I'm going to use not just Bitcoin, but a basket of hard currencies, platinum, gold, not Bitcoin and others, but I'm going to transfer all 204 Bitcoins that are now in federal possession because of confiscations to the U.S. Treasury, and essentially start a Bitcoin Fort Knox. And then I'm going to buy 4 million Bitcoins, which will give us, the United States, about don't have a place to keep their wealth safely, so they invest in real estate, but now they have Bitcoin. Bitcoin is immune to inflation. It cannot be inflated because it cannot be printed. It's decentralized, so nobody is in charge of it. Nobody can corrupt it. It's incorruptible. And it also, it has all these other functions. It functions as a bioweapon defense system. The Bitcoin blockchain can guarantee us free, fair elections, and guarantee us election integrity. It is an off-ramp from inflation for the American middle class, so they can put their money in a Bitcoin and they know that it's not going to be destroyed by inflation. It's ultimately a big off-ramp. The entire deficit, the $34 billion budget deficit. We need new industries to do that, but Bitcoin is its own off-ramp, which is a beautiful, elegant, poetic off-ramp. We need to bring blockchain back to this country instead of driving it out, which the Biden administration does, and we need to bring AI in this country. The innovation, all of those energies should be in the United States, not in Dubai, not in Switzerland, not in Singapore, not in Iran or China. We need them to be here. We need to bring all the entrepreneurs home. One of the ways we got, we put our last deficit crisis behind us was by starting a new industry, which was Silicon Valley. We need new industries that we cannot cut our way out of debt. We need to grow our way out of it and make the debt proportionally stronger. So we need to make investments in things that are going to increase our GDP, but we also need to find new industries, and the obvious ones are blockchain and AI. But Bitcoin is its own off-ramp because, if we get the first person to act on Bitcoin, First nation to act will own the global reserve currency forever for the next 250 years. And, right now, people in China who have some wealth, they would much rather put their wealth in the United States. Well, that's why they're buying all the real estate in Canada and the US. They don't trust their own government. People in Russia do not trust their own government, and they would rather put their money here, but they can't. It's very difficult to buy real estate here. Then you have to pay taxes on it, and there's all kinds of costs associated. But if we link the US dollar to Bitcoin. We'll now have a currency that is infinitely divisible. You can trade with it on your cell phone with no friction, no fees, no banking fees. Country. And so it is a really elegant, practical solution for our, for the most insurmountable, most existential of our problems, which is that national debt and then the inflation that is just destroying the middle class in our country.
Bobby, I apologize because I'm being told in the comments that the CIA or BlackRock is trying to interfere with our audio, but it does seem to be improving right now. I am told I have a very hard stop coming up in about 7 minutes, and we still have at least 2 questions to get to. So I guess we're going to enter, I don't want to call it the speed round, but the next question, the next 2 questions are on education and job access or career access for young people. And one was submitted by Students for Kennedy, and they just want to know, and it's going to lead right here into Hannah's, because I do know you need to eat and you're not going to get to if we don't get you off because you have another commitment. So the Students for Kennedy account down in the comments has asked over and over and over again, what are you going to do to make education affordable again for young people? And then that's going to lead right here into Hannah, who specializes in helping young people find careers, whether or not they need a degree.
I mean, in terms of higher education, first of all, I'm going to make all of the federal benefits to higher education, to college education, available for trade schools, so that kids have a choice that they can go to trade school, because we need to develop that capacity back in our country. I also would say this, that I think the education system is about to go through a revolution from AI, and that it's going to be a lot less necessary. I think that the higher education institutions are going to be struggling to get students, because if you can learn everything through AI, through taking a course on AI, if you can learn everything that you need to know about a whole area, the colleges are going to have to compete with that. And when I went to law school at University of Virginia, and I paid $600 per semester. And, and today, if you wanted to do that, it would be $70,000 for the year. Nobody can afford that. And if you're in law school, you can probably pay that back. But people who are racking up $250,000, $100,000 debt coming out of college, their chance of ever paying that back is, my wife came out, put herself through college. She was 37 years old when she got her acting break on Curb Your Enthusiasm, but she was still paying her debt every year, and she had no hope of ever paying that off for her entire life. And you can't discharge it through bankruptcy, which is not right. I will make it dischargeable through bankruptcy. And I'll also make it possible to refinance that debt so that you can move it. And it's insane that kids can't do that today. And so those are some of the things that I would do with higher education, with lower education. With high schools and schools, I want to move to more and more to charter schools to give people choice. And that's what's going to, that competition, that free market competition is the only thing that's going to save our education system.
Oh, Tiffany, I don't know if we can hear you.
Sorry, I posted a video today that I think that's
I can't.
I made a video today that showed our private equity. Hold on. There we go. I made a video today that KKR private equity just bought billions of dollars in student loan debt from Discover, and they paid way above market value because they have said to their investors they will spare no expense in guaranteeing they collect all of the fees and all of the compounded interest on top of it. So it's going to be a worthwhile investment for them. It's so offensive. And on top of that, the ACT, which was a nonprofit for the last since 1959, just got bought by private equity and they took it for profit.
My world now, so I can actually speak. You were so kind and so gracious to me. I very much appreciate how kindly you handled that. First, I made a fool of myself in front of like 600 people because I can't speak in public, but thank you all. So I will be more concise here, sir. So essentially, I work in AI. I actually work with large language models. I have for the last 3 years. So I have a very interesting lens on this, but I also have a lot of proprietary data for my work. So I interviewed hundreds of parents and their young adults who are 16 to 20 years old. The problem that I found is that most US high schoolers can only name 6 to 8 jobs. When I ran an analysis of the BLS data, which has 867 jobs in it, of those jobs, only 7.7% of them legally require the purchase of college degrees. I even include some professions like teaching and law where that's not always the case, as there are 4 states where you can still read the law, as I'm sure you know. So what I have realized is that this is a policy down problem. Policy down in US high schools, they are college pipelines because they are funded by the government, and the government is the biggest profiteer off of student loans. So when you talk about strip mining wealth from the middle class, it's actually the academic industrial complex that is the group taking out student loans now is grandparents, because they have already taken it from the kids, from the parents, and they've gone back up to the grandparents. And what is happening, the other reason people can't buy homes is because they spent on average $156,000 on a bachelor's degree, whose ultimate cost after lost wages and interest is well over $500,000, when the result is 1 in 4 college graduates with bachelor's degrees make less than $32K. And then there is actually negative return on about 48% of master's degrees at this point. The biggest issue with this is the bankruptcy exemption. There is no incentive for the colleges to act morally. There is no incentive for them to lower prices. There's no incentive for them to improve product. They have no accountability, absolutely zero. And so what I was wondering is if there is some way from an executive standpoint for you to change this, because even at the federal level, when they hire for jobs, they discriminate against people who have not bought paper for jobs that do not even require it, like park rangers, where there's no clear reason to require any bachelor's degree for that job, but yet it bars people who have the skill set, who have the ability, and who have the desire to have those jobs. And so what I would like to know is, what do you think is the way to fix that? And I know we're out of time, but I do appreciate you letting me.
Others are saying, and you're educating me about, I know about this issue. I know just generally that we cannot build an economy on a generation that has this black cloud of debt over their heads. It just is, it's insurmountable, and it's demoralizing, and in many ways they got tricked into it. They were told, you got to do this by our generation, and now they're in debt for the rest of their lives. And as you say, even their grandparents are getting dragged into it. It's really like, why? It's exactly what I'm saying about how they're just pulling the wealth from every corner. And and it's wrong. But I don't think you can tell private companies that you can't require a college degree, but I think you can do that for park ranger. And you can get a job.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you. There's something going on with Hannah's side. Whenever she does it, we all hear an echo every time she unmutes. So I'm trying to mitigate.
Right, well, I gotta go. I actually have another appointment that I'm now late for, but thank you everybody for participating. And I really enjoyed talking to you. And if you want to preserve free speech, preserve TikTok as a space for free speech, go to my page and click on the link and sign the petition to stop the TikTok ban.
It's the top link in my bio. Bobby, I'm going to send you over Hannah's question comprehensively because I know your team asked for some they could respond to with videos over the next 2 weeks too. And I know you wanted to do more with that, I could tell. So I will get that question sent over that way as well for you guys. I'm going to just once again, thank you for coming on here. I believe our next topic is going to be on the three-letter agencies and corruption in our agencies and our branches. We're so glad to have you on. We're grateful for the time you give us. We're grateful for you being the first one that was brave enough to help us start TikTok Town Hall. And we hope everybody here saw the value. Right now, we're at 198,000 live viewers tonight, 198.7 right now, which is an amazing turnout. And just, I'm so grateful that you made all this time for us. We're really, really happy to have had you on.
I love talking to you guys, and I'm really looking forward to the one on the intelligence agencies. I'm glad that this generation is figuring out, that these are not friendly agencies to the American experiment with self-governance.
We have people that have been targeted by it, major creators whose families have been destroyed by them. We have a really amazing group of panelists coming up for that one. So I'm just super excited you were here again. I always wish we had like 3 hours because there's so much follow-up, right? And we want so much more. Every time he comes on, we get to make a little more progress in getting into the details of these policy issues. I really feel like, as an example, today online, there was a post on X, which I know it's a bad word in here or whatever. It was talking about how the new Harris campaign, which is not a Harris anyone else campaign because we don't have another candidate, right, is just killing it by using all these Gen Z memes to get excited, to get everybody excited. And I responded, until you present a policy, I'm not like, we're not excited. We want to know what you're actually going to do. And I got a response. And they said that I needed to be patient. Patience, it will come. And I sat there and my mind was so blown that somebody from a campaign would look at me and go, we'll get to policy. We are 90 days out from an election, ma'am. Like, it's so hard to get any politician to actually talk about the details of what they would actually do. It's so easy to speak in platitudes and broad strokes.
That has, we'll read it after we pass it vibes.
Yes. And for me, that's what this is about. That's what we're doing here. That's why we're here. For everybody who was a first timer here tonight that has never been to TikTok Town Hall, down in the comments, I saw I got some new subscribers tonight. Thank you guys. We bring on candidates from all across the spectrum. We have everybody from the Libertarian Party to the Green Party to the Independents. We've invited on, I just heard back from JD Vance's team that he might be coming on. I've been trying with Biden-Harris for a long time. I was told flat no last time, but I'm told now it's let's know. We'll find out. But every single one of you guys is doing a brave thing. It's so hard to come on and engage in conversations because we get targeted for even having the conversation on these apps pretty regularly. Like, they'll come for you. Like, people will, every one of you I'm sure saw in your comments this week, I can't believe that you're not talking to this candidate. You're never going to make everybody happy. You guys are all so brave for coming in here, not because it should be something you have to be brave to do, but because you get villainized now if you don't fit into the mold of whatever your follower has decided you should be. And I'm a firm believer that we can't change anything unless we have these hard conversations with the people we agree with and the people we don't. Like, you can't clarify where somebody stands if you don't ask the questions.
Thank you for hosting these. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys. I lose a lot of money doing it, but it's a lot of work. It's way more work than I ever thought it would be. But I actually think it's the most worthwhile thing I've ever done. Ever. What was it like for you guys tonight to just, how'd you guys feel about it?
It was nice that there was a candidate willing to not just explain their stance, listening to him, whether or not I agree with what he was saying. I feel like I learned something about his perspective. And it's just, to be genuine conversations between people about how you can fix the problems and make the world a better place or make your country a better place. But it's just so lost now with tribalist politics. And that's what's drawn me to Kennedy, is because I'm over the tribalism of right versus left, because I was very tribal 2 years ago. And
you were. When I started following you, so I always make a joke on the app that the algorithm doesn't know what to do with me, because I made a very deliberate choice when I got here to follow the most far right and the most far left creators I could, and the most moderate creators, so that I could learn. Yeah. I made a very, like I say, I'll get canceled if anyone goes and looks at who I started following you when you were very tribal. Very tribal.
But the thing is like social media, especially when you're building a brand on it, you kind of put yourself in this corner, and then you're stuck there because the algorithm keeps you there, and then your followers want you to act a certain way. But I think a lot of us are doing a good job at changing that by leading by example and being okay with being ostracized for changing our opinions. And so that's what drew me to RFK. And yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I think that it was a really good thing for the viewers as well as us and myself.
Rathbone, you're a really good example of somebody that doesn't make. I mean, you didn't start to make political content. You're a musician, a really good one, by the way, like a really good musician. And I see that as somebody with a degree in music.
I like your music, although I entirely disagree with like everything you stand for. I
love that for you.
I'll give you that compliment.
I'm a music teacher, and I started following you for not right, left, or middle. I did not find you that way. I found you because I loved your music. And then you started making political content. You're a really good example of a creator that came here to do something you were passionate about, and all
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's vitally important that we have dialogue in, our political discussions and sharing political ideas. How are we supposed to, create policies if we don't create the ideas? First, I think thoughts become action, and I want to, share more ideas that are, sort of sidelined. I think the working class ideology, the values and principles of the working class have been fragmented and sidelined. And so I just want to speak to other working class people in society and try to change the narrative and try to make more of the ideas that I guess vibe with or whatever, but I want them to make them more palatable, more acceptable. And I think, for whatever reason, political satire works, making propaganda. I consider myself a political agitator, as I'm sure a lot of you, as content creators, that's sort of what is the name of the game. We're supposed to get people to think, and it can be, it's political agitation. We're supposed to agitate people and educate them. So that's what I feel as a teacher. That's what my contribution is. So that's what I'm doing. But thank you for all the kind words. I really did have a great time here. I think it was really enlightening.
one of the things that's been really interesting is that when I first started this, I had to go to all my friend creators and beg. I'd say, please just come on. Please, I know you're going to get canceled, but please come on. Just, I need a couple people recognize. Like Dad Life Jason took a huge risk the first time he came on here. He lives in Oklahoma. It's a very staunchly conservative area he lives in. You're not allowed to step outside your bubble. And he has, 20 million followers. And his entire family and his foster children rely on his. And so I had to do that. After the debate, I received dozens of requests from huge creators to come in. But I'm still trying so hard to make sure it's balanced. I can't just be like, oh, yeah, sure, just because you have 2 million followers, you can be a panelist. Like, I really want to drive the conversation and create an educational space that everyone feels represented in. JD, you guys make a very different style of content, right? And the stuff that you guys talk about doesn't always lead towards crypto or banking or regulatory corruption, right? So did you guys poll your audience for what you wanted to talk about today? Do you guys feel like these kinds of conversations are important for any type of creator?
I think what it really boils down to is the thing that's on the top of mind are things anymore. They're cutting out whether it's maybe they own their home some way and they're having to self-insure when it comes to insurance, or maybe they're having to modify their groceries, maybe they're having to drive less or experience less of the finer things in life. So the reason that we decided to discuss those particular topics is because I genuinely believe that all of the subsequent topics flow from the corrupted monetary system of the United States, to which every other government is enslaved. It started with the Bretton Woods Agreement, that specific international interaction there. And basically, we think that we think that relationship is the currency of life, that you want to be in wealthy and meaningful relationships. And in order to do that, you have to be able to feed your children. Be constantly demoralized and in despair. And I think that these are the things that ultimately are all downstream of, not the relationship aspect, because people are in terrible situations around the world and the things that carry them through are family. But regretfully, the monetary system is really the bedrock of our current existence. And I think that it's important that we have discussions like this because they help educate people to the real reasons behind the various challenges that they're experiencing that are associated with government and otherwise. So that's the reason for the questions, and we just went a long way down learning about some of these things over the past several years.
And Rachel, you have an account that is entirely economically modeled, right? Your Money Honey Rachel. Do you feel like your followers got answers they were looking for tonight? Were the topics you're the only person right here in the box right now that all your content is monetary, because Freddie was really not feeling well, guys. He had a fever, he was really sick, but he just popped out. But do you feel like these are the kinds of answers? Did this feel more substantive than what they're getting elsewhere? Do you feel like we need to do more of anything?
I thought it was really eye-opening, and I like to hear the solutions that he's presented and how specific he is on a lot of things. It's funny that I have the most economic financial content, but I actually feel the most politically not involved, and I have a lot of respect for all of you. I feel like as time has gone on, it's become more and more discouraging to have political discussions or feel like I can make a difference. I guess maybe the best word for it's like politics feels very inaccessible to me. And I think one of the best things about this, Tiffany, and thank you again, is just seeing and observing and realizing we can have direct access to these people and being a part of this discussion. It's very, very cool what you're doing. It's very important work. So I really appreciate it. And I do think my followers benefited a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I honestly, I never thought anybody would. We're going to take a quick second, and I'm going to shamelessly self-promote, and then we're going to try to land this plane. For everybody down there in the comments that doesn't know, I get offered thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to work for campaigns and make content for them every single week. The Biden campaign offered me, I showed you guys the emails, thousands of dollars to make content for them and say that campaign, and I get offered money from lots and lots of other places, but this is a 50-hour-a-week job for me. So the only way that I have found to maintain my integrity right now and not sell my soul so that I can keep bringing nonpartisan, genuine discussions and genuine access is that I do take subscribers, and it's $5.99 a month, and it's just you guys sponsoring my ability to do this. I can't promise my subscribers get much else that everybody else doesn't. I'm going to be honest. Like a lot of the subscriber models, they give you like very special after hours events and things like that. I occasionally do special writings where we all get together and write letters to the FTC. I do that. Not very exciting, not very sexy, but it is the way that I can, like, if I can get to like 300 subscribers, I can afford to do this without having to find money elsewhere. So if you guys are interested in supporting what we do here, it is $5.99 a month, which is, you know, one coffee. Equity firm got a judge to say I wasn't allowed to work for 2 years. So now I volunteer teaching special needs children music classes, and I have to find all of the money and the time to do this. So for those of you that subscribe tonight, I am grateful. For those of you that are considering it, please do. And I cannot promise you it'll be anything fancier than what I'm already giving you, but I appreciate the support. All right, everybody, we're going to land this plane. We do have another town hall coming up with RFK. Coincidentally, we may get the opportunity to do a live one from the Independent National Convention because I just found out I'm getting a journalism award. I didn't know there were journalism awards for this, but I am getting the Champion of Independent Voices Award. I didn't know there was a thing. So I'm super excited. So we may be doing a live stream town hall from the Independent National Convention for the 4 people that just subscribed in the last 2 minutes. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I am inching my way closer to those goals. I am very excited to know we have Jasmine Sherman coming on shortly. And we have Representative Ro Khanna from Northern California that's going to be joining us for a town hall in the next couple of weeks. He is out of town for the next week and a half, but he will be back after that. Thank you, Kiki, for subscribing. And I hope every single one of you comes on for more of these town halls. I don't want people to just show up for the candidates they're most interested in. I want them to ask those hard questions of every single candidate. And I think it's essential. And it's the only way that we can create the accountability that we are entitled to as voters and that is necessary for us to regain control of the decision making in our country. Right now, we may have a representative republic, but we are not represented. And I intend to do everything I can to change that and to restore that. And I'm glad all of you are with me on this journey. I could not be more grateful. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, fight with me so that I can learn more, that's what I want from you guys. And I'm so glad you guys were all here. Everybody, I want to remind you that you guys can sign the petition that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has right now that he's trying to deliver to Congress to cancel the banning of TikTok. It is at the top link in my bio. The second group is a kit to help you send a letter to the FTC and the DOJ to hold monopolies and private equity accountable. I built it. It takes you less than 3 minutes. And by the way, the FTC and DOJ just extended the comment period. So we still have another 6 weeks. You can keep sending your letters. We've already contributed over 3,000 of them, and we are going to make a difference. I know because when we did it last year, 2 laws just passed, and one of them says Tiffany Cianci on it. We are making a difference. It literally says Tiffany Cianci at footnote 62. We are making a difference. So you guys can do that at the link in my bio. You guys can always register for our TikTok town halls at the links in my bio. And please follow every creator that was in these boxes tonight. And don't just follow Rathbone's backup account. He is banned forever from making lives for the same reason he was probably running for the police in his video yesterday that I was very, very inspired by. You should also follow him at Rathbone Makes Music, degreefree.co, Money Honey Rachel, Clarkson Jackson down here, and JD and Britt are on this app, but they're American Family Road Trip everywhere else. Follow everybody everywhere. I've tagged them in my posts on X, so you can bounce over to X where I am the Vino Mom, because I've had it for 13 years and I refuse to give it up. And you guys can follow everyone. I've tagged everyone there, and you can also do it over on Instagram. Everybody, thank you so much. It's been another amazing TikTok Town Hall. Leon, thank you for the subscription.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, thank you for giving up your Sunday night to us and to democracy and to your followers. And I will see you guys back for the next TikTok Town Hall. Everybody have an amazing, amazing night. Thank you.
I've got to pee.
I'm sorry. No, I always have to at the end too. I always run from my barn to my house, Bucks, and I get it.
I'm like shaking. All right, bye guys.
Run. Every night when I get off these, I have to bolt to my house to go pee because I'm not a guy and I can't do it standing up outside. Stinks. All right. Have a great night, Rachel. Have a great night, Rathbone. Thank you so much.
All right.
And just like that, guys, and then there was one. For those of you that actually just got us to our subscription goal, I am so humbled. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. For whoever started the wave, I appreciate you guys more than you know. I am 3 subscribers away from my total goal of 75 for this week. And that's because of you guys and your appreciation for what I'm doing here, which means the world to me. I am immeasurably grateful. I can't thank you guys enough, truly. I'm going to try not to be emotional, but every time that I realize 200,000 people in the world care about this, I am moved by it. And every single one of you makes that possible. And every single time you share and every time you like and every time you help us stay in the algorithm with such difficult content, you make that possible. I cannot thank you guys enough. I hope you all learned something tonight. You took something away from tonight. I hope you followed all of the creators. I hope you accessibility and that accountability, and they owe it to the American people, and we'll be here to hold them accountable. Everybody have an amazing night. I am so grateful for all of you.